Mathematics is a difficult subject. The majority of students don't like mathematics in school. My father's wish for me to be a good mathematician made him hire a mathematics teacher for me. The mathematics teacher my dad hired to teach me mathematics taught me other things asides. From mathematics, sit back, relax, and read what the mathematics teacher taught me. My dad grew up in the city of California. He attended a neighborhood primary school before moving to St. Patrick High School. My grandfather was a professor of mathematics at California State University then. His dream was for my father to succeed him and become a great mathematician like him. My dad was not good at mathematics in his primary school. When he started high school, things were still the same, although the teachers used to cut him some slack because he was good at other subjects. In his primary school, he was the best student in English. He carried that performance to high school. Nobody was better than him in mathematics in his class. His father was not happy with being the best in the English language. He wanted my dad to replicate the same performance he has in the English language to mathematics. A few weeks before my dad's first exam in St. Patrick High School, my dad prepared him very well for the mathematics exam. They solved all questions together. They even went outside what was taught in the class. My grandfather was doing all this because he wanted my dad to become a great mathematician like him. The exam came and my dad did his best. He was optimistic that he would have a good result in mathematics for the first time. When the result came out, my dad was left disappointed. He passed all subjects except mathematics. When he took the result home to his dad, he was also left disappointed. He blamed my dad for all the efforts he put into making him have a good result in mathematics. My grandfather started having a second thought. His thought initially was for my dad to study mathematics when he gets to college. He started thinking about whether to allow him to study what he wants. But deep down in him, he wanted my dad to be like him because my dad was his only child. My grandma and some of his colleagues at work have advised him on most occasions to allow my dad to study what he wants. But my grandfather was not confused. He wanted his only child to take over him and become a highly respected professor like him. When my dad brought the result home, he started thinking about what to do to improve my dad's mathematics. At first, he thought of changing my dad's school from St. Patrick to another school. He thinks if my dad meets another mathematics teacher, his situation might improve. Anytime such thought comes to his mind, he always reminded himself that St. Patrick might not be the issue because my dad has been a poor mathematician since he was in primary school. He decided to allow my dad to continue at St. Patrick High School for another session. This time, he had the determination to take my dad away from St. Patrick High School if his performance in mathematics does not improve. The school resumed after their holiday, and my dad resumed with them. My grandfather had already told my dad that he will take him away from St. Patrick High School to another school if he does not do well in mathematics. My dad didn't want to leave St. Patrick High School because he has a lot of friends there. Therefore, he determined within himself to do well in mathematics in the next exam. My dad put in more effort in his mathematics than he did in previous sessions. Once he has thought any topic in mathematics, he will take it to his friend Michael. Michael was a good mathematician. He used to teach my dad during the weekdays while my grandfather will teach my dad during weekends. A few weeks to the exam, my grandfather took time off his busy schedule and stayed at home to teach my dad. He made sure that he covered every topic that my dad was taught in school. The exam came and my father did his best like he used to. When the result came, my dad failed once again. He was very sad when he saw the result. He knew there was nothing that will stop his father from taking him away from St. Patrick High School. He started thinking about how he was going to miss his friends. When he took the result home, his dad checked it. When he noticed that he failed, he told my dad that he should prepare to enroll in another school for the next session. My father tried to talk to his father about a possibility of improvement if he allows him to continue at St. Patrick. My grandfather was not ready to listen to any explanation. A week before the resumption of school, my grandfather took my dad to St. Paul High School for enrollment. My grandfather told them that the reason why he brought my father to the school was that he wants an improvement in his mathematics. He told them that my dad was good in all other subjects except mathematics. He told them that he is a professor of mathematics at the Chicago State University, and he wants my dad to become a great mathematician like him. The head teacher at St. Paul High School assured my dad that he will see an improvement in the next exam. He said they have trained teachers who can handle my father and make him a better mathematician. The head teacher said they have handled several cases of such nature, and all the students came out good. He told my grandfather that my dad's case wouldn't be any different from the other cases that they have handled successfully. When my dad resumed finally, the head teacher took a special interest in him because of what my grandfather told him when he brought it. While everyone goes for a break, he will tell my dad to go and read in the library. After school closes, He would not allow my dad to go home. He will tell him to wait behind for another series of lectures. My dad won't go home until 6 p.m. My dad is always tired whenever he gets home because of the stress at school. The head teacher was not concerned. All he wanted was a good grade for my dad. A few weeks before the exam, my dad did what he usually does. He took time off his busy schedule to see how far my dad has gone in mathematics. They started from the first to the last topic. He made sure he taught him every possible question that he might encounter in the exam. The exam came and my dad did his best as usual. When the result came, his performance was average. It was better than what he used to have in St. Patrick. This time around, he was more confident to take his result home. He knew he didn't do too well, but his performance improved. When he took the result to my grandfather, he was still not satisfied despite the improvement. He said he wants a spectacular result, not an average result. He said there is no way an average student can become a lecturer, not to talk of rising to the level of a professor. He told my dad that mathematics is different from all other subjects. He said being an average student or lecturer is allowed in other courses except for mathematics. He said there are two things in mathematics. It is either you are good at it or you are not good at it. He said being average is not allowed. He told my dad to work harder or face the consequence of moving to another school. My grandfather was determined to go any length to make my dad a great mathematician. The holiday coincided with when my grandfather was off work. He used the holiday to prepare my dad for the topics for the next session. He made sure he taught him all the topics. So, when school resumed, my dad had prior knowledge of the topics in mathematics. On the first day of resumption, my grandfather followed my dad to the school to remind the head teacher of the reason why he brought my dad to the school. My grandfather appreciated the efforts of the head teacher, but he told them to do more. He said he was happy that for the first time, his son was able to do meaningfully well in mathematics. He said he doesn't want him to stop there. He said he wants the performance for the next session to be better than what he had. The head teacher told my grandfather that they will continue to do their best until my dad becomes a great mathematician. The new session started with the revision of the topics of the previous term. After the revision of the previous topics, they proceeded to the topics of the new session. Because of the prior knowledge that my dad had, he was able to answer questions in class. His improvement started to show in class. The head teacher continued his ritual of keeping my dad at school until 6 p.m. like he used to. 2 weeks into the new session, a new female student enrolled in St. Paul High School. On her first day in school, she was brought to the assembly ground and she was introduced to all the students. After the assembly, she was shown her class. Fortunately, she belonged to my dad's class. After the introduction at the assembly ground, she was asked to introduce herself again to the members of her class. The new student told the class that her name is Olivia. She said she is 16 years of age. She told the class that she is from a family of 4 children, and she is the last child. She told the class attended St. Isabella Primary School. After she graduated from St. Isabella, she moved to St. Sophia High School. She said she completed her junior school there, but she decided not to proceed with her senior school there for reasons that she doesn't want to say. Olivia said she is happy to meet her colleagues. She promised to be of good character. She promised to represent the school well in every aspect. It was a norm in St. Paul High School for old students to welcome a new student with a song. They all stood on their feet and sang for Olivia. After the song, the head teacher told the students to welcome Olivia and make her feel comfortable. The head teacher told Olivia to take her seat while he left the class. There was no available seat except the seat close to my dad. When Olivia sat close to my dad, she said hi to him. My dad responded. My dad told her to feel comfortable. He told her that she would enjoy her stay in the school. He told her that he joined the school last session, and he has been enjoying his stay in the school. Olivia and my dad's conversation flowed well. His colleagues in class were surprised by my dad. Since he joined the school, they never saw him having a long conversation with the opposite gender. His main friends are male. When the bell for closing time was rung, Olivia came to my dad. She told him that she wants him and her to be going home together. My dad told Olivia that he doesn't go home with other students. He told her that he doesn't leave school until 6 p.m. She asked him why he stays behind when other students are going home. My dad told Olivia that it's a long story, but he will tell her if she is ready to listen. My dad started his story by telling Olivia about his father. He told her that his father is a professor of mathematics at Chicago State University. He said since his days in primary school, he had always had poor results. He told that St. Paul was not the school he started his high school education. He said he started his high school education in St. Patrick High School. He said his father had to withdraw him from there because his performance in mathematics did not improve. He said since he joined St. Paul High School, his performance has improved a little bit. That is why he is still a student of the school. He said one of the things that have been aiding his improvement in mathematics is the extra class he used to have with the head teacher. Olivia was stunned by the story she heard. She told my dad that she is good at mathematics too. She said she doesn't mind to be teaching him mathematics if he agrees. My dad said he can do anything to become a great mathematician. My dad said he will come to her house during the weekend because he doesn't have time during the weekdays. Olivia agreed to teach my dad mathematics at her house during the weekend. No sooner had she planned to start another conversation than the head teacher arrived. She waved at my dad while she was walking to the school gate. The head teacher was curious to know how my dad was able to bond with a new student on her first day in school. As soon as he sat down, he asked my dad what he and the new student was talking about. My dad said she told him the reason why she was enrolled in the school, and he also told her his reason. He said he told her about his deficiency in mathematics and what he has been doing to improve it. He told the head teacher that she promised to be teaching him mathematics when she is free. He did not tell the head teacher that she told him to come to her house. The head teacher was happy with what he heard. He appreciated my dad for always wanting to learn. He urged him to continue learning. He said very soon he will become the great mathematician that his dad wants him to become. The head teacher said Olivia is a very capable mathematician. He said she answered all the mathematics questions that were thrown at her during her interview. He said he was very surprised by her performance at the interview. He said he is sure of her abilities. He said my dad will benefit a lot from her if he is ready to learn from her. My dad told the head teacher that they have already concluded. What is left now is for her to start teaching him mathematics when she is free. The head teacher had the usual class with my dad like he used to. After the class, my dad went home. The next day at school, Olivia and my dad's friendship continued. Everybody in the school started noticing them. During the break, my dad wanted to eat at the school restaurant, but Olivia declined. She told my dad to eat from the food she brought. My dad didn't want to, but she forced him. Olivia said the food she brought is for both of them. When Olivia persisted, my dad had no option but to eat with Olivia. The next day, she did the same thing. My dad ate with her throughout the week. On Friday, when Olivia was about to leave school, she told my dad that she will be expecting him in her house. My dad asked her if 10 a.m. is good. Olivia said my dad should come by 11 a.m. because she has some laundry to do in the morning. My dad obliged. He told her that he will be at her house at exactly 11 a.m. She waved goodbye and made her way to the school gate. My dad woke up very early on Saturday morning. He used the opportunity to do his laundry. After he finished his laundry, he went to the kitchen to eat breakfast. He finished eating his breakfast at exactly 9 a.m. because he still had time. He went to the sitting room and started watching a movie. He watched the movie until 10 a.m. before preparing to leave. He went to his room and picked his bag. After picking his bag, he went to his mom's room and informed her that he wants to go and do some mathematics at his friend's house. My dad left the house at exactly 10:15 a.m. By 11:10 a.m., he was in front of Olivia's gate. He punched the bell outside the house and Olivia answered. When she detected that it was my dad that was at the gate, she rushed down from her room to open the gate for him. She led my dad to the sitting room. She told my dad to sit on the couch while she went to the fridge to get him a bottle of wine. She served him the bottle of wine and she switched on the television. She went to her room and brought out the books they will use for the lesson. After my dad finished drinking the wine, she started her lesson. She asked him to list the topics that have been taught in class. After that, she asked him to tick the topics he does not understand. My father listed the 6 topics that have been taught in class. After that, he ticked 2 out of the 6 as the ones he does not understand. Olivia started her lesson with the first topic. She explained it to my dad's satisfaction. After she was sure that my dad understood the first topic, she proceeded to the second topic. She taught my father the second topic to his satisfaction also. She made a topic that was very difficult for my father easy for him. He began to fall in love with mathematics because of Olivia. After the class, Olivia went to the kitchen to prepare food for my dad. After they finished eating, she put the television back on. They watched the movie for about an hour. While they were watching the movie, Olivia was looking for a way to get closer to my dad. She has started falling in love with him since she started teaching him. A few minutes after, she went to where my dad was sitting. She asked him if he was understood what she taught him. My dad replied in the affirmative. She moved her hand across his shoulder while she continued the conversation. She allowed my dad to feel comfortable with her hand across his shoulder before she made the next move. In her next move, she unbuttoned one of my dad's buttons. At that point, my dad knew something was about to happen, but he pretended as if he didn't notice Olivia's move. As soon as she unbuttoned him, her hands went straight to his left nipple. She started caressing it gently. At that point, my father became uncomfortable due to the pleasure. When Olivia noticed that, she continued what she was doing. After caressing his left nipple for some minutes, She unbuttoned him fully. Now, she was using her mouth to suck his left nipple while her left hand was caressing his right nipple. My dad was moaning loudly out of excitement. At that point, Olivia knew she had my dad where she wanted him. She continued her action until my dad could no longer control himself. He immediately pulled off his shirt and his trouser. His size was what grabbed the attention of Olivia. She stared, caressing every part of his body with her hands while her mouth remained on his left nipple. She did that for a very long time because she wanted to keep my dad in the mood. When she realized that my dad's mood was uncontrollable due to his moaning, she took him to her room. They continued sucking and romancing each other. After hours of kissing and sucking, Olivia opened his legs wide and invited my dad. He inserted it, and you could see how Olivia was enjoying my dad's action from her moaning. They had sex till they were exhausted. After the sex, they both lied down on the bed and slept off. My dad woke up at exactly 5:15 p.m. When he woke up, he woke Olivia up too. He told her to open the gate for him so that he can return home. Olivia said she wished my dad could pass in the night in her house. My dad said he cannot because his parents will be waiting for him at home. Olivia followed my dad to the gate and opened the gate for him. When my dad got home, my father was back from work. My dad was shocked. His dad asked him where he went to. He told him that he went to a friend's place to study mathematics. He told him that he informed his mom before leaving. His dad was not confused with his explanation. He told him to show him what they did where he went to. My father brought out his book and showed his dad. It was after he checked his book that he became satisfied. The next Monday, my dad and Olivia stood very close to each other on the assembly ground. They could not take their eyes off each other. They kept smiling at each other until they entered the class. Even when they entered their class, they sat close to each other. Their friendship became very strong than ever. They did everything in school together. Every week, my dad will go to Olivia's house for a mathematics lesson. Every visit comes with its sex. My dad and Olivia had sex every weekend. His dad could not stop him from visiting Olivia because he was seeing improvement in his mathematics. A few weeks before the exam, my dad and Olivia studied very hard together. My dad wanted to justify why he was leaving the house every weekend to go and study mathematics. The exam came and my dad did his best like he used to. A week after the exam, the head teacher invited all the students to school for their results. When my dad collected his result, he was happier than ever. He and Olivia was the best student in mathematics. Immediately he collected his result. He rushed to where Olivia was sitting to show her his result. Olivia was so happy for him. She hugged him tightly and kissed him on his cheek. For the first time in my dad's high school life, he was proud to take his results home. When he got home, he showed his mom the result. She was so happy. She hugged him and kissed him. She told him to sit down in the sitting room while she prepares a very delicious meal for him. My dad sat in the sitting room waiting for his meal. After 1 hour, his mom brought him his food. She also bought an expensive wine for him. He ate and drank to his satisfaction. When his dad arrived from work, he was the first person to welcome him. As soon as his dad sat on the couch, he brought out the result and presented it to his dad. After checking the result, his dad was short of words. He told him that he has made him proud for the first time. He said this is what he has always wanted from him. He said he does not want him to relent. He said he wants him to retain his position in the next exam. He promised to buy a very nice gift for him when he is coming from work the next day. My dad and Olivia's friendship continued to wax stronger. They continued their friendship until they graduated from high school. On the day of graduation, my dad did what Olivia has been expecting him to do for months. He called Olivia to a lonely place where there was no one. She was surprised by his action. She asked him what he wanted to tell her that made him bring her to a lonely place. My dad started by clearing his voice. He told Olivia that, although they have been having sex, but he wants to officially propose to her. He said he wants her to be the mother of his unborn children. Olivia was smiling all along. She wondered what prompted him to say what he was saying after they have been having sex for months. Olivia told my dad that she loves him. She said if she does not love, she wouldn't have had sex with him multiple times. They all smiled and joined their colleagues in the hall. After they graduated from high school, my dad and Olivia got admission to the same college to study the same course. They were both admitted into Texas State University to study mathematics. Their relationship continued in college until they graduated. On the day of their graduation from college, my dad knelt and proposed to Olivia. He officially gave her the ring that signified that she is his fiancée. Everybody was happy for them, especially those that knew them right from St. Paul High School. 3 months after my dad proposed to Olivia, they got married in a flamboyant style. The marriage had many dignitaries in attendance. Dignitaries from every sphere of life attended the wedding. The couples got a lot of gifts, which include a car, phones, television, laptops, and a whole lot more. After the wedding, they had to take some of their gifts to the needy because they cannot use all the gifts they were given. A year after the wedding, They gave birth to me. At exactly 2 years, I started attending primary school in our neighborhood. While I continued to proceed in my education, my parents noticed that I had the same problem that my dad had when he was young. They noticed that I used to pass every subject very well except mathematics. During my final exam in primary school, I did very well in all the subjects except mathematics. I would have been awarded the overall best student in my school if not for my poor performance in mathematics. After I graduated from primary school, my dad enrolled me at St. William's High School. I continued with my good performance in other subjects except for mathematics. My dad adopted his father's method whether there will be an improvement. But there was not. One day, my dad followed me to school just as his dad did to him. He told the head teacher that he wants me to be a good mathematician. He said it awkward how a child that has mathematicians as a parent be poor in mathematics. He urged the head teacher to do everything within his capabilities to make sure that I become a great mathematician like him. And my grandfather. He said he wants the knowledge of mathematics to continue running in his family. The head teacher immediately swung to action after my father left. He told me that he will be holding special classes with me after school hours. We held special classes for the first session, and there was no improvement. My father had the thought of taking me away from the school to another school, but every time he discussed it with my mom about it, she usually disagreed with him. She said she doesn't want me to be moving from one school to another. She said the frequent change of school can harm student academic performance. One day, my mother was on her way back home when she met a young man in the company of one of her friends. When she finished the conversation with her friend, she asked her about the young man that was with her. Her friend told her that the young man is her daughter's teacher. She said someone told her to employ him when she told the person that her daughter was not doing well in mathematics at school. Her friend said that since she employed the young man, she has seen tremendous improvement in the academics of her daughter, especially mathematics. My mom told her friend that she is having the same problem. She told her friend about my struggles with mathematics in school. My sister and I had sex with the same man. Strange things happen in life. Some are avoidable while some are not. This story talks about how my sister and I had sex with the same man. Who would have thought something like that would happen to us? My name is Sophia. I was born into a family of 4 which consists of my father, my mother, my sister, and me. My dad and my mom met at a mall in Chicago. My mom came to the mall to buy some groceries. After picking everything she needed, she went to the cashier to make payment. It was when she got to the front of the cashier that she realized that she left her money and her bank card at home. She felt embarrassed. She stood in front of the cashier without any hope. When my dad bought all he wanted to buy, he queued at the back of my mom thinking she was in the queue. It was after some minutes when he noticed she wasn't doing anything that he knew she wasn't in the queue. He approached the cashier and asked her why my mom was standing without making payment. The cashier told my dad that my mom said left the money she was supposed to use at the mall at home. My dad asked the cashier for my mom's fee. The cashier said it's $250. My dad paid and he left. When the cashier returned to her seat, she told my mom that she can go. My mother dropped the items she bought and was about to leave. The cashier told her to pick her groceries because someone has paid for what she bought. She asked the cashier for the identity of the person that paid for her groceries so that she could appreciate the person. The cashier said the person that paid does not want his name mentioned. My mom was not satisfied with that. She persuaded the cashier until she gave out the identity of my dad. 2 weeks after, my mom came to the mall again to get some groceries like she usually does. Fortunately for her, my dad also came to the mall that day. When my mom bought everything she needed, she approached the cashier and made payment. While she was about to leave, she saw my dad approaching the cashier. She waited patiently for him until he came outside. Immediately she saw him outside. She hurriedly walked to him. She said hi and he responded. She asked him if he remembers who she is. My dad said he meets a lot of people every day because of the nature of his job. He said he doesn't recognize people easily except his close friends, his families, and his business associates. My mom said she walked up to him to appreciate him for the favor he did for her some weeks ago. My dad said he does a favor to a lot of people, so he cannot remember the actual favor she is talking about. My mom said she was the one he paid for her groceries some weeks ago. Upon hearing that, my dad remembered. He asked her how she was able to identify him because he told the cashier not to reveal his identity. My mom said the cashier didn't want to give out his identity. She said it was her constant persuasion that made the cashier reveal his identity. While they were chatting, my dad received a call from one of his business associates. He was told to report to the King's Hotel for a business transaction. My dad told my mom that he had to leave. He collected her cell phone number and left. After my dad left the meeting that day, He called my mom. He told her he just wanted to confirm if she gave him her actual number because he was not able to confirm. After all, he was in a hurry. After talking to her that night, he asked if they could meet at the King's Hotel the next day. My mom was unemployed then, so she was free every day. She asked him why he wants to meet her in a hotel. She said she is not comfortable meeting him in a hotel on her visit. My dad convinced her that he doesn't have anything to do with her. He said he just wanted to have a nice time with her because he will be bored at the hotel. He told her that he doesn't have any issue with her if she decided not to come. He said he can choose another location for them to meet if she feels she cannot meet him at the hotel. My mom was convinced by my dad's explanation. All the doubts she had in her mind disappeared when she listened to him. She thought within her that if he was a bad person, he wouldn't have helped her out of her situation at the mall the other day. The next day, my mom did everything she had to do at home before heading out to the King's Hotel to meet my dad. She left her house at exactly 11 a.m., and she arrived at the King's Hotel at exactly 11:45 a.m. When she entered the hotel, she went straight to the receptionist. She told her that she wanted to see my father. The receptionist asked her if he is expecting her, and she replied in the affirmative. The receptionist put a call through to my dad to confirm what my mom told her. When my dad answered the call, she told him what my mom told her. My dad confirmed that my mom is his guest. He told the receptionist to show her his room. The receptionist called one of the security men that were standing in front of the hotel's main gate. She told the security man to lead my mom to my dad's room. The security man walked my mom to my dad's room and went back to his duty post. My mom knocked on the door and my dad answered. He asked who was at the door and she mentioned her name. He quickly rushed to the door and opened it. My mom sat on the sofa while my dad sat on the bed. He got up from his bed and went to his fridge. He opened his fridge and brought out a glass of wine. He brought the wine in a cup and placed it on my mom's table. He opened the wine and drank from it. He helped my mom pour hers into the cup he brought. After that, he dragged a sofa and sat close to my mom. At first, my mom was shy. She was saying anything and she was drinking from the wine. My dad asked her why she wasn't taking her wine. He said the wine is for her. He said the only reason why he drank from the wine is to show her that the wine is safe. My mom said she is curious to know why he invited her to a hotel. She said she doesn't like going to unfamiliar places. She said she couldn't reject his plea because of the help he rendered to her the previous day. My dad said he wants her to forget about the help. He said anybody could be in such a position. He said the reason he invited her is to ask her some questions. My mom said she will like to hear the questions. He said the first question he wants to ask her is her relationship status. He said he wants to know if she is going out with someone. My mom wanted to know why he asked her that sort of question. She asked him to explain. My dad said he just wanted to know. My mom said she had someone she was seeing before, but something happened and they went their separate ways. My dad said he wants to know what happened if she can tell him. My mom said it's not something she likes talking about, but since he insists on knowing what happened, she will tell him. My mom said she met the guy at a stadium where she went to watch a football match. She said the guy sat close to her at the stadium that day. She said after the match, he came to her and asked for her cell phone number. She said she didn't give him because she didn't know him and he didn't have any conversation with her while they were watching the football match. She said she went to buy groceries at the mall one day when she ran into him. When he saw her, he walked to her and greeted her. She said she didn't recognize him at first. It was after he introduced himself before she remembered who he was. She said she had no option but to give him her cell phone number. She said she was sleeping on Friday when she saw his call. She said she didn't want to answer at first because she didn't know the number. She said she had no option but to answer the phone when the call did not stop. She said it was when she answered that she knew that he was the one. She said he asked her that day if she could meet him at a hotel. She said she told him she cannot because she doesn't know him too much to be with him at a hotel. She said they went back and forth on the phone before she finally agreed to meet him. She said when she got to his hotel room that day, she met him and two of his friends. She said after some time, his friends went, leaving only the two of them in the room. She said while they were having a conversation, he brought out a bottle of wine from his fridge and gave her to drink. She said she didn't know that he has added some drugs to the wine that will make her sleep. She said 10 minutes after drinking the wine, she slept off. She didn't know what was happening until she woke up. She said when she woke up, she met him on top of her. She said she cried her eyes out that day. She said she was sad that day because she ended up doing what she didn't plan to do. She said what hurt her most was when he confessed to her that his friends also had sex with her. She said she cried for several days. She said she had to go through psychological therapies before she got herself back. My dad was amazed by her story. He said that explained why she didn't want to drink the bottle of wine he offered her. She said she had the same feeling when he offered her the bottle of wine, but Her mind became settled when he drank from the bottle of wine he offered her. My dad said humans can be dangerous, but he is not like that. He said he is a gentleman who will never take advantage of a woman. My dad asked my mom if she dragged the guy to court for what he did. She said she planned to drag him to court so that he can face the consequences of his action. She said she changed her mind when she discovered that the guy was not fit mentally. She said it was after the action that she realized that he was receiving treatment for mental health care. My dad sympathized with my mom. He said if he knew her story was that bitter, he wouldn't have insisted on hearing it. He said he is sorry for making her remember the horror she passed through in the hands of an insane man and his friends. My dad advised her that she should not judge every man by what her ex-boyfriend did. She said some men are different, and he is one of them. My mom was just smiling where she was sitting. After my mom narrated her story, she told my dad that she was still curious to know why he said he wanted to see her. My dad said, at this moment, he can't hide his feelings anymore. He said the reason he invited my mom was to tell her how much he loves her. He said he wants her to be the mother of his unborn children. My mom laughed. She said how would my dad someone he doesn't know very well? He said if my mom agrees to date him, they will know each other very well. He said that was why I asked her if she is in any relationship. My mom told him that what he asked her is difficult, and it requires time for her to make a decision. She said after what she went through in the hands of her ex-boyfriend, it will not be advisable for her to rush into any relationship. My dad said he understood her perspective perfectly. He said no one would want to go through what she went through with her ex. He said he would give her all the time she needs to think about it. My mom left the hotel at exactly 7 p.m. While she was going home, she kept thinking of what to do. She decided to take her time so that she won't fall into the hands of the wrong man. Throughout that week, my mom could not sleep well. She loves my dad, but she was scared to go into any relationship. After going back and forth, she decided to give my dad a chance. My dad was at home on Saturday when he saw my mom's call. He hurriedly answered it because since they met she has never called him before. He has been the one doing the calling. So, when he saw her call that Saturday, he knew she wanted to tell him something very important. When he answered the call, he told my mom that he was surprised to see her call. My mom asked him why he said that. He said he noticed that she doesn't call him. He said since the day they met at the hotel, he has always been the one calling her. My mom apologized to him. She said it's unlike her. She said it's because she has been thinking a lot. My dad advised her to stop thinking a lot. He said thinking can cause a lot of sicknesses like depression, high blood pressure, and many other dangerous diseases. He urged her to always come to him when she needs someone to talk to. My dad was curious to know why my mom called. He said he knows she has information to tell him that was why she called. My mom said she has. She said she wants him to tell him that after a long thought, she has finally decided to date him. She told him that it was a difficult decision for her to take, but she feels he is a good man. She said she hopes he won't make her regret her decision. When my dad heard that, he interjected quickly. He said he will make sure that she doesn't regret the decision she took. He said he will be by her side anytime she needs him. She told him to take care of himself and she dropped the call. My dad was happy throughout that day. He celebrated all through that day. He called his neighbors to celebrate with him. He invited them to his room and cooked for them. They all ate to their satisfaction. Later in the day, my mom called my dad again. He did not answer the call because he was still celebrating with his friends and neighbors. My mom called thrice but he didn't answer. When she realized that he wasn't answering his calls, she stopped calling. After his friends left, he put off the music because he wanted to sleep. When he lied down on his bed, he decided to surf the internet. As soon as he picked his call from the table, he saw 3 missed calls from my mom. He quickly returned the call. My mom was sleeping when she heard that her phone was ringing. She answered it. As soon as she answered it, my dad apologized immediately. He said the news that she delivered to him in the afternoon prompted him to hold a party for his friends and neighbors. He said he did not hear when his phone rang because the music was very loud. He said it was after his friends and neighbors left that he realized that she has called him. He said he is very sorry. My mom was very surprised when she heard that he threw a party because she accepted to date him. She asked him why he did that. My dad said she doesn't know how precious she is to him. He said if she knows, she wouldn't be asking him why he threw a party because she accepted to date him. She said if he is throwing a party because she accepted to date him, what will he do on the day of their wedding? My dad said their wedding will be the best in the city. He said he will make sure that he gives my mom an elaborate wedding that she will be proud of. He said her wedding will be the best wedding party ever. My mom was just laughing on the phone. She was short of words. She said she wants to sleep, but she wants to know if he doesn't have anywhere to go the next day. My dad said he only goes to church on Sunday. He said after church, he is always in his room. My mom said she called because she wants to visit him the next day. As soon as my dad heard that, He screamed very loud. My mom asked him why he screamed that loud. He said she has just made his day. He said he will prepare a very delicious meal for her. My mom asked him if he knows how to cook. He said he won't blow his trumpet. He said she will see for herself when she comes the next day. He said after eating his food, she will score him 95 or 100%. My mom laughed. She said she cannot score anybody 100%. My mom said she wants to sleep. She said they will meet the next day. The next day, my dad woke up at 5 because he wanted to meet the first service at church. As soon as he woke up, he took his bath. He didn't even wait to eat breakfast. He left the house at 6:30 a.m. and he got to church at 7 a.m. He sat in the church waiting for the first Sunday service to start by 7:30 a.m. At exactly 7:30 a.m., the presiding pastor walked into the church and commenced the first service. The service ended at exactly 8:45 a.m. As soon as the service ended, my dad jumped into his car and drove home. On his way home, he stopped at the mall to get some ingredients he needed to cook the delicious meal he promised my mom. At exactly 9:45 a.m., he arrived home. As soon as he pulled off his cloth, he went straight into the kitchen. He was in the kitchen when my mom's call came in. He hurriedly answered it thinking she was on her way. When he answered it, he asked whether my mom was already on her way to his house. My mom said she is still at home. She said she just finished her laundry. She said she will take her bath as soon as she ends the call. She asked my dad what he was doing. My dad said he is in the kitchen cooking the delicious meal he promised her. My mom said she thought he was joking when he told her that he wanted to cook for her. She said she didn't know that he meant it. My dad said he was not joking at all. He said she will see for herself when she comes. My mom asked him why he didn't go to church. My dad said he went to church. He said he went for the first service because he wanted to return home very early. My mom busted into laughter on the phone. My dad said he had to do all that because of her. My mom ended the call and rushed to the bathroom to take her bath. After taking her bath, she wore a sexy dress and headed out to my father's house. At exactly noon, she called my dad that she is in front of his gate. My dad hurried to the gate to welcome her. When he opened the gate for her, he couldn't take his eyes off her sexy body as he walked her to the sitting room. When they entered the sitting room, my mom sat on the couch while my dad went to the kitchen to bring the food he prepared for her. He placed the food on her table and went to the fridge to get her a bottle of wine. This time, my mom ate and drank the wine without any fear. After my mom ate the food, my dad asked her for her assessment of the food. My mom said he tried if she wants to be honest. She said if she wants to score him in percentage, she will score him 96%. My dad laughed. He said my mom does not want to score him 100%. When my dad noticed that my mom was settled, he moved close to her on the couch. He put his hand across her shoulders while he continued his conversation. A few minutes after, he thought he should up his game. He placed his left hand on my mom's lap. At first, he thought she would complain, but she didn't. My mom was enjoying every bit of what he was doing. When he realized that she didn't complain about the position of his arms, he started caressing her legs with his hand. As he was caressing her lap with his left hand, his right hand moved from her shoulder to her boobs. He was pressing her boobs softly with his right hand, while he was caressing her laps with his left hand. 5 minutes into the caressing, my mom couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to keep her cool, but she did not know when she started moaning out of excitement. At that point, my dad knew he could do what he wanted with my mom. He hurriedly took off her remaining only bra. He took off his shirt and trousers too. He positioned her very well on the couch while he continued using his hand to caress every part of her boobs. His tongue was stuck on her left nipple while his right hand was on the right nipple. He continued sucking and caressing my mom. The soft moans soon became loud as the pleasure was just too much for her. 10 minutes into the romance, my mom couldn't take it anymore because she was wet. She took off her undies and invited my dad to ride her. My dad rode her for half an hour before they all collapsed on the chair. After the sex, they all slept. My dad woke up at exactly 6:30 p.m. He hurriedly woke up my mom so that she can go to her house to prepare for work the next day. When she woke up, she pulled my dad close to her and kissed him again. She told him how she enjoyed the sex they had. She said no man has ever ridden her the way my dad rode her. She said if she knew she would enjoy herself the way she enjoyed herself, she would have come over with her office wear. She said she would have slept in my father's house so that she can enjoy more rounds of sex. My dad smiled. He said since they are now together, she will enjoy a lot of sex. He said he would give her every sex style she wants from him. My mom left the house that day feeling very happy. As soon as she got home, she jumped on her bed and slept off. The next day, she went to work feeling happy. One of her closest colleagues noticed that she was in a joyous mood, so she asked her the reason for the joy. My mom narrated how she met my dad in an unusual circumstance and how they became friends. She told her that she was there yesterday, and they had explosive sex. She said it's been a long time she had explosive sex like the one she had yesterday. Her colleague was just smiling. She urged her to take good care of my dad. 8 weeks after, my mom started feeling weak. She was vomiting and spitting everywhere. She became so weak that she could not do anything. The next day, she went to the hospital for treatment. After she was diagnosed, the doctor told her that she is pregnant. He said she is 4 weeks pregnant. He told her to rest better and stop doing heavy jobs because of her present condition. My mother appreciated the doctor and left the hospital. As soon as she got home, she called my dad and told him about the pregnancy. My dad screamed that everybody in the office heard him. She heard him saying, "I will become a father soon." She could hear his colleagues in the office congratulating him. At first, my mom was skeptical before she made the call. She had the thought that he could reject the pregnancy because they only had sex once. But the way he was screaming joyfully in his office gave her joy. She also put a call through to her parents and friends to inform them about the pregnancy. Everybody was just happy for her. 9 months after, my mom gave birth to me. She and my dad celebrated my birth elaborately because I was the first child. They bought everything I needed for me. They enrolled me in a standard primary school. After my graduation, I was enrolled in the best high school in the city. 7 years after my parents gave birth to me, my mom became pregnant again. When she became pregnant again, she had from work because she could not cope with taking care of me and taking care of the baby in her womb. 9 months after, my mom gave birth to my sister. After a year, she got another job. My sister was enrolled in the best primary school. After she graduated from primary school, she was enrolled in the same high school as me. I was in senior high school while my sister was in junior high school. Every day we used to school together. When I got to my final year in high school, I met Samson. Samson was the son of my head teacher. Samson was in college when I met him. He came to the school that day to collect something from his father. He saw me when I was coming from the toilet. He called me and I walked up to him. I asked him who he was and why he called me. He told me that his name is Samson, and he is the son of the head teacher. As soon as I heard that, I became interested in what he wanted to tell me. I asked him why he called me. He said he just want us to be friends. He said he saw me as someone he could talk to when he is at home. I said there is no problem with that. He asked me if I have a cell phone that he can contact me on. I gave him my cell phone, but I told him not to call because I did not bring the phone to school. I told him to leave a message for me so that I can save his number when I get home. When I got home, I saw his message. I called him and informed him that I have saved his contact on my phone. My mom and dad traveled on Saturday, leaving only me and my sister at home. We watched a movie till we became bored. I thought of what I can do to make the house lively. While I was thinking, Samson's call came in. I asked him what he is doing presently. He said he is at home watching a movie. He said the house is boring to him because his dad and mom left the house for a meeting. I told him that I am also bored at home because my mom and dad traveled. I asked him if he could come to our house and spend some time. He said he will be there in a few minutes. 30 minutes after, Samson called me. He told me to open the gate for him because he is standing in front of our gate. I hurried to the gate to let him in. When he entered the house, I did not allow him to sit in the sitting room. I walked him straight into my room. As soon as we entered, I pushed Samson to my bed. Before he realized what was happening, I had taken off his shirt and trouser. I took off my shirt too and we started romancing each other. We romanced passionately that I didn't hear my sister calling my name. When my sister did not see me in the sitting room, she came to my room. When she opened my door, she caught me and Samson having sex. I became dull and I didn't know what to do. My sister threatened that she will tell my mom what she saw. I pleaded with her but she didn't want to listen. She said I have to fulfill one condition for her not to tell my mom what she saw. She said the condition is that she must have sex with Samson too. I walked up to Samson and told him what my sister said. Samson obliged. He walked to my sister's room and they had explosive sex. That was how Samson had sex with my sister and me. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
I am 17 and I hate people asking me if I am a virgin. Hi, I am Phil. I am just 17 and I had been staying with my cousin Luke for some weeks now. Before now, I had never met Luke in person. I have only had a couple of virtual chats with me. Before now, to be frank, I was only called upon to say hi on those encounters. Before now, he and my mum are so close, those two are something. Before now, I once thought, there is something fetish going on between those two. Before now, I haven't written that off yet. Before now, I don't trust my mum with men, and I am still yet to catch her with one. It is wrong of me to say my mum is cheating. On who exactly? She is a single mother. She has every reason to be dug by different kinds of men. Before now, she won't be breaking anyone's heart if she does that, but I am yet to see a man knock at the door except the mailman. Before now, it can't be him. He looked gay, and he is gay. On his visits, he looked at me instead of my mum. Before now, that man is something else. The mailman is a tall dark guy. Before now, he once told me he is a Belgian but came from a strong background of Congolese. Before now, my mum has black men's frames in her room but I doubt she was ever interested in one. Not even Mr. Christoph, our neighbor, and the only black man with the German accent I have ever seen in my all life. His daughter, Anna, is not black. Before now, initially, I thought Mr. Christoph adopted Anna, but she is his actual daughter. Anna and I are quite close, but nothing intimate was going on between us. I am not comfortable with girls. I haven't approached one my whole life. Before now, everyone in our neighborhood knew I am a virgin. I guess that was why my mum asked Luke to come and pick me. We talked about this, but for the first time in like forever. My mum wanted her to wish to come to pass. I can recall Anna telling me that her grandfather met a South African lady on his expenditure to Africa. The end product of what happened between the two is her father. Before now, Mr. Christoph is a single parent just like my mum, but he had never knocked at us. Not for once. Before now, he is a busy person, which gave Anna the privilege to invite several classmates to her place. Especially the male gender. Her room is opposite mine, and I do watch on her from my window. Before now, I got a binocular for this purpose just to gaze and fantasize about her figure. To be candid, I love watching her make love with the other guys that came visiting. Before now, according to my research, the standard time for sexual intercourse is 15 minutes, but this girl came last more than an hour. Before now, once a guy is done, she gets another in. Sometimes age rocks 2, 3 guys at the same time. I guessed she found out, but she had never mentioned it. Before now, she never asked me to come to see her in her room too. Before now, she once told me, "You're the most real guy in my life." That doesn't sound like I am interested in you. She preferred the friendship, but I can't say I do. Due to watching her, I started jerking off. Before now, I imagined her and stroked my penile muscle. Before now, my commonest commodity was now toilet rolls. On the stall one day, the salesgirl was looking at me with a weird face because all I came to buy were toilet rolls. "They're my mum's," I said. She scoffed. Over time, I realized watching Anna do her thing is toxic to me. So I ceased looking at her, but I couldn't control the huge again. My head kept looking for holes to dig. Before now, I had now become an addict. Who will set me free from this? Before now, I didn't tell my mum about it, but she surely knows. She might not know how I got sensitized into doing it, but she knew how I started. Before now, if you also think it was Anna's shape and curves that caused it, you're also wrong. I can't say this is what he does for a living, but Luke knows how to get a party started. Before now, since we had been living together, we had grown to understand ourselves over the weeks. Before now, Luke isn't all bad. He is a good person to be with, but not for me at this time. Before now, Luke has so many acquaintances but not a single friend. I wonder how he does that. Before now, he will always say, "Don't get too close to people. Once they're close, they will get the edge over you." It still doesn't make any sense to me to date. Living with Luke at the beachside is an idea. I can't tell if it is a good one or a bad one. Our relationship is kind of toxic to me, but Mum said that is what I need for now. Before now, all my life, I had lived with my mum until now. She had never seen anything wrong with me staying with her until when I finished high school. "You need to stay with a man to understand what men are built for before you finally go to college," she would say. Here I am, living my mum's dream for me. Before now, I kind of like the idea now. I am the newest guy in town in the city of no shame. Before now, it is normal to go in public and hit a lady's buttocks cheeks, or even go ahead to squeeze them, without anyone bringing up harassment as a topic. Before now, the guys in this new environment don't have any other thing they do. All they look for is to hit their waist hard on some soft buttocks, and the ladies just want to ride the guys. Things seem balanced here. Everyone knows what the other person wants and they are ready to give it to each other. Before now, this is the only society where no one has any reason to rape. Before now, if a lady turns you down, another will give herself to you without you asking. Before, it was difficult for me to adjust to how things work here. Before now, all my life before now, a guy had to approach a lady and so some talking, and then she might give him what he wanted or not. That's normal. At least not all guys that talked to Anna ended up on her bed, but most did. That's for sure. But here, all you have to do is go straight to the point. If you are that good, you can get up to 5 ladies before the end of the day. Being a virgin is not a virtue here, to live in this community. You need to get laid. Before now, when I entered, I was the only virgin I know of. Before now, not even Gina, the bartender's daughter. She's just 15 and she's pro in her league. If she hadn't handled me, I would not have believed myself. She is good with her mouth and her throat is so stretchable. Before now, she even swallows the whole thing and thank you for it. What a polite girl. After just a week of staying at the beachside with Luke, I had already forgotten about Anna. Don't blame me, you would have done the same too. Before now, I have so many girls to fantasize with. Before now, I am always hard all day, even while I sleep. I can't get my head off what I am seeing everywhere. Before now, nothing is hidden here, you can just look out from the window and start releasing. Before now, I don't have to stroke myself anymore. Here the imagination is real. While I was still with my mum, watching Anna wasn't enough for me anymore. Before now, I started visiting the web to watch videos. Before now, this made me jerk off so many times a day. Before now, my mum noticed but saw it as the norm and never made a fuss out of it. Before now, she didn't discourage the habit, neither did she encourage it. Before now, that had become my new hobby. She would enter my room, find me at the moment. And yet, excuse me. Before now, I became so popular on one of those sites that they started sending videos to my emails. Instead of this to cure my urge, it increased it. I don't know the reason for that. It was me all the way. Before now, I love the opposite sex more than I love myself. I could recall vividly that as a small child I watched romantic movies with mum and she always allowed me to cuddle her. Before now, she didn't see anything wrong with me watching those movies with her. I got fond of those types of movies, which I made sure are the only kind of movies we have at home. While my mates at school got intrigued by action, thriller, fictional and animated movies, all that got my attention was romantic movies. Before now, while still a small boy, I had started looking at the girls in such a tempting way. Before now, I see beyond their clothes while just looking at them. Maybe that's the reason I didn't do well in my academics. Before now, that was what led me to peep at Anna. The girl is innocent of my crimes, I am the culprit of my predicaments. At Luke's place, there is no television or internet. Before now, I cannot remember the last time I used Facebook. All he does is the club from the sunrise to the sunset. Before now, I didn't know Luke so much before now. My mum spoke highly of him on things that doesn't matter. Before now, sometimes I thought my mum had been having intimate affairs with his nephew. Before now, but this is not feasible either. Luke lives thousands of miles away and mum never lives home. She is an artist and she had transformed the garage into her workshop. She only goes to the stores to buy groceries. Before now, the other place she visits that often is the art stores to buy her pieces of equipment. To be frank, she's good at what she does and her imagination is wild. Do you remember the frames of the black men painting in her room? Those were his drawing. People love her paintings and she had attracted so many customers for herself. Before now, she is talented, she deserves the credit. Before now, when I was younger I had also had an interest in artistry. Before now, I started drawing with crayons and color sticks. Before now, my mum will frame my little paintings. Funny enough, people bought them, not just young kids like me. But the elderly ones also find them attractive. Now, I am a good painter myself. Before now, I single-handedly made the designs at my high school since I had been in the 8th grade. Before now, I had participated in a few competitions myself and won some medals for myself. I have an online page where I use my creativity for money. Before now, my brain was doing things the right way before Anna stepped into the story. Before now, I am not proud of the day I met her. I left my goal and started chasing after fables. Is she to be blamed? Before now, no, it was all me and I hold myself responsible. I had learned graffiti by the way. Before now, it is more fun painting on the walls with some color sprays. My mum did not buy this idea, since I had changed the whole wall to something else. Most teenagers stop by at our walls to take a few shots. Before now, but this time, my mum was not so proud of me. She said I had a child's imagination. Before now, according to her, paintings don't just depict the painter's imagination. It also describes the painter's mind. Before now, I wonder what my mind looks like. My mum is fond of speaking mysteries. Before now, her idioms looked as if they would make sense but made no sense eventually. Before now, she laughs at me whenever I showed her weird faces. She would say as my mind developed, I would understand them. Before now, these days, when I recall her idioms, I smile, they now make sense. I asked Luke about his girlfriend. Before now, he has not shown me one. Before now, and he had shared the bed with nothing less than 15 ladies since I have been with him. Before now, some had come here more than once. He is terrible. I barely sleep at night and there is nothing to distract me. Before now, no TV and no internet. Since my arrival, all they do here is to party in the afternoon and club at night. Most people come here for holidays. In my few last weeks, I have seen several faces already. Before now, Luke once told me, you might not remember the face but don't forget these two things. 1. The backside. And 2. How you were rocked. Before now, I wonder what that means. Before now, the other few here work around. It is either they work at the beach as instructors or as safeguards, or they work in bars, grocery stores, salons, music stores, and other necessities stores. Before now, nothing much happens where outside the holidays. Luke has a great connection with one of the bar owners. Before now, he is not the manager nor the bartender but does all those things and gets paid for it. Before now, he is the symbol of attraction at the bar and almost everybody knows him. Before now, it was as if he has been here his whole life. Before now, I heard he graduated college a year ago. Is he not supposed to be working with a white collar? Before now, I am not a fan of Luke, but he is good with ladies, to be frank. When I got to his place, I made it clear that I was asked to come to live with him, so that I can find my path. He laughed scornfully as if I had spit on his face. He told me, you are here to learn how it works in college. How it works in college. He drew a calendar of 30 days with me and told me to summarize my day by drawing out symbols on the space provided. I slept throughout the first few days, then I saw Gina. Before now, she offered to suck me. Before now, I was amazed. What can this little girl do? Before now, she asked me to come to the restroom. I followed, and she gave me my wildest experience until that day. Before now, I had never been sucked before. Before now, but, as far as I can feel it, little Gina is not a novice in the game. Before now, she told me, she keeps numbers and her goal is to reach 1,000 before she graduates high school. Before now, I will soon reach my mark, she told me. Before now, I wonder what number I am on her list. After Gina, I had met several ladies. Before now, I had unbuckled my belt in bed than I had in the restroom. Before now, I am no more the little good boy that I used to be. Things had changed now. Before now, I was trying to regain my interest in art and paintings when Luke showed up, but instead, I have gone wild. I still paint today, even with a greater mind. Before now, but all I paint now are images of women who had gone naked in front of me. Everything has its own ups and downs, but now I could not tell if I am enjoying life or I am wasting my talent. Before now, I do not know right from wrong anymore. Before now, I just wanted to live this life and enjoy every bit of it. Before now, Luke is very good at persuading people to do things they don't plan to. I guess that was the reason he is so close with the bar owner. Before now, he studied psychology in college. He is a good student according to what his parent had told my mum over the phone. Before now, he is not using this knowledge right as far as I am concerned. He is so good at understanding and predicting people, which has won him so much luxury and fame. Before now, to be truthful here, he is not a good mentor. Before now, I had spent more than a month at his place and he has never mentioned anything about his career nor has he said anything concerning mine. What is he doing with his bachelor's degree? Before now, he gets paid for doing things I would do for free and get laid all night. Little did I know that Luke had been conversing with my mum on phone telling him about my progress. Before now, my mum's plan for me is to live it wild before going to college. Why will she do that? She told me herself when she called, as she usually does. Before now, that fateful day, she asked me the most unexpected question. Who is Gina? Before now, I was stunned. Before now, who is Gina? I rebelled. Before now, don't be naughty, she rejoined. Before now, how did you know about Gina? Before now, I asked. Luke told me about Gina. Luke had told me about everything, she replied, and Gina seemed to be the interesting character in his stories. Before now, so Luke was not just giving me tips on how to reach for a girl's panties, he is also updating my mum about the progress I had made. Okay, I explained to her how Gina and I met and our journey so far. Before now, I made her realize that I was not proud of it. Before now, Gina is 2 years and a few weeks younger than me. Before now, I felt like I had taken advantage of her. That doesn't sound true. Before now, I promised my mum that I would not try that with a little girl anymore. Never. Before now, she laughed. It was so obvious that it was fake. Before now, she then said, to get the actual target, the vulnerable must be used. It was like she didn't get what was going on. Before now, I was not the hunter here. To be frank, I was the one been hunted. Before now, Gina with all her skills and experience could not be vulnerable. I am. Before now, I had been every lady's prey since I got here. People don't care if I enjoyed it or not anymore. They just wanted to satisfy their urge. Before now, no one knew. I didn't have so much experience myself. The only ones I had were Anna's and her dolls and the web. Before now, I haven't even dug a lady before. Before now, that was the reason my mum asked me to come to live with Luke. I don't know much, but I guess she is tired of picking my wet and sticky toilet rolls from the floor. Before now, she wanted me to stop fantasizing and start the real thing. Before now, I remember her asking me if I now know the difference. Before now, I told her that I still haven't found out yet. Getting laid, sucked, and licked is common here, and everyone except me to all I know had 3 out of 3. Before now, for me, getting sucked is okay. Within just a few weeks, I had squeezed more lemons than the actual ones and sucked on them than a newborn baby would have. Before now, I have a likeness for the big and saggy ones, and here sag ones are not something to be ashamed about. Before now, the saggier it is the better the experience. Before now, I had gotten so many ladies disappointed for not reaching for their holes. Before now, but I am determined to keep my virginity. Before now, I am a Christian and I don't want to cross the line, that is if I haven't already. Anna had been calling me of recent, remembered, she said I was her favorite opposite sex. Before now, this had started recurring to me. Before now, was she asking to make up with me. Before now, she told me things that did not concern me a bit. She told me she would be going to Namibia to learn the ways of her ancestry route. Before now, yes, we aren't that close for me to know your plans. Before now, we had never talked about what she would love to become. All we talk about are assignments and school activities. I begin to wonder if she had an interest in me. Before now, maybe she purposely let me look at her from the window. Before now, she should have just said it in common words. Before now, I don't understand signs and idioms. My mum tried it with me and she failed. She spoke at length this time around even though we are miles away. Before now, she told me of how her mother died of breast cancer when she was just 5 years of age. Before now, she told me that her father is a German. I never knew he is a pharmacologist until now. Before now, she told me about her first sex with a grown-up man. Before now, she told me all her experiences. Before now, it was a pitiful experience. Before now, I don't know why she is this open, but I am not interested in getting laid if that is what she wants. Before now, the calls kept calling but I had never called her back, not once. Before now, don't judge me, I was being careful. Luke is a fan of inviting friends over after party. Before now, my first morning at his place, he hosted a party for me. Before now, he said the party was for me but I was not included at all. Before now, all the balloons and strips had my names on them, but I was not in the center of the party. Before now, no one noticed me. Before now, I was shocked at such a welcome party. I left the living room for my room after Luke introduced me and no one noticed my absence. Before now, I peeped through the door hole and I saw all sorts of styles going on. Before now, the music was loud but no one was dancing to the beat. Everyone was digging, squeezing, or hitting someone. Wow, such a party on my behalf. Afterward, Luke would just invite his friends for a few shots. Before now, they chat and I am permitted to join in their discussion. Before now, they talked about business, cars, places, famous individuals but mostly girls. I like this kind of chat. Before now, later, when they found out about my painting, art was included in the discussion. The interest was minute, but I appreciated it. Yesterday, Luke and his friends were at our place. Before now, we talked for a while before John asked if I am still a virgin. I was surprised by that question. Before now, it stunned me, I don't know the correct answer to give. Before now, was I even a virgin before coming here? Before now, what is the New Age definition of a virgin? I tried to wave off the topic and Luke helped me in succeeding with that. Before now, we talked about Luke's sex life instead. Before now, I said so much about himself, I guessed he was trying to drive them away from me as much as possible. Before now, I appreciated what he did for me. I thanked him later and he gave me a big hug. It is well, he said to me. But come to think of it, that wasn't the first time someone would ask me if I was a virgin. Before now, Gina was the first to ask me. I told her I can't say but I haven't gotten laid yet. Before now, she laughed and I allowed her to laugh all as she could. Before now, I didn't stop her, she told me my secret is safe with her. Before now, another lady whose name I can't recall. Before now, I don't even think she knew me too. Before now, she was not the courteous type, she just wanted to get to the business. Before now, after the foreplay and series of sucking and stroking, she wanted me to go all the way down. Before now, I refused, she asked me the same question but I refused to respond. Before now, she got irritated and left, I never saw her again. Before now, I had encountered more of these misfit questions throughout my stay with Luke. Before now, I didn't tell Luke about it, but the rumor reached him. Before now, here, no one cared about your name. Before now, so, they referred to me as Luke's cousin. Before now, I spoiled Luke's face which is bad for business but Luke was fine with it. Before now, am I still a virgin? Before now, I wish to know your thoughts on this.
How I Caught My Sister and Kate's Boyfriend. This story portrays betrayal. It shows how betrayal can come from the people that are very close to us. This story details how I caught my sister and her closest friend's husband. Who would have thought my sister could do what she did? Sit back and enjoy how everything played out in this story. Many years ago, my dad settled in a small community in the city of Alabama. My dad was the third person to occupy a house in the community. 5 years after, he met my mom at his friend's party. He approached my mom and she agreed to date him. 2 years after, they got married officially. 6 months after my mom and my dad got married, Mr. John built a house close to my dad's house, so they became very close friends. A year after their marriage, my parents gave birth to me. 2 years after, they gave birth to my younger sister. Because of Mr. John and my dad's friends, he usually comes to our house anytime he likes. One day, my mother's friend Mrs. Mariah came to visit my mom to congratulate her on the birth of my younger sister. Fortunately, Mr. John came in while Mrs. Mariah was still around. My mom noticed how Mr. John couldn't take his eyes off Mrs. Mariah's boobs. He kept staring at every part of her body without minding who was looking at him. When Mrs. Mariah left, my mom called Mr. John and asked him why he couldn't take his eyes off her guest. She said she felt embarrassed by the way he was looking at her. Mr. John apologized to my mom for making her guest uncomfortable. He said he kept looking at her because he liked her. He pleaded with my mom to give him Mrs. Mariah's cell phone number. My mom said she cannot give out Mrs. Mariah's number unless she asks Mrs. Mariah herself. She said if Mrs. Mariah tells her to give him her number, she will, but if she does not, there is nothing she can do. My mom picked her phone in the presence of Mr. John and called her friend Mrs. Mariah. First, she appreciated her for coming to greet her. After that, she tabled Mr. John's request to her. Mrs. Mariah told my mom to give Mr. John her number. When my mom ended the call, she took a pen and paper and wrote Mrs. Mariah's number on it. After writing it, she handed it over to Mr. John. Mr. John appreciated my mom and left. When Mr. John got to his apartment, the first thing he did was to call Mrs. Mariah. He introduced himself to her and he told her how he got her cell phone number. He told her that he has a lot of things to tell her, but he cannot say it on the phone. Mrs. Mariah insisted that he should say it on the phone, but he declined. He said he would like to see her before he can say what he wants to say. Because of Mr. John's persistence, Mrs. Mariah agreed to see him. She said she will come to his house on Saturday. At exactly 9 a.m. on Saturday, Mrs. Mariah was at our house. My mom told me to show Mrs. Mariah where Mr. John lives. I took Mrs. Mariah to Mr. John's house. Immediately I showed her the door. I went back to our house. 1 hour after, my mom wanted to pass information across to Mrs. Mariah, but she wasn't able to do so because she wasn't able to reach Mrs. Mariah on her cell phone. When she tried calling her multiple times without any response, she sent me there to check on Mrs. Mariah. When I got there, I knocked on the door gently, but there was no response. I knocked for more than 2 minutes without any response. When I didn't get any response, I pushed the door and it opened. All this while I have been knocking. I didn't know that the door was open. When I entered inside, I didn't see anybody in the sitting room. As I moved closer to the room, I heard how Mrs. Mariah was moaning. Her moaning was so loud that Mr. John had to cover her mouth with his hand. I wanted to know why she was moaning, so I went out of the room and started piping through the window. The window was very big, so I saw everything. I saw Mr. John on top of Mrs. Mariah. He used his left hand to cover her mouth to prevent people from hearing her moan. He was using his right hand to rub all over her body. Anytime he noticed that her moaning has stopped, he would kiss her. From where I was watching, you could see that Mrs. Mariah was enjoying the kissing. I could see how she was drawing Mr. John back to her when she attempts to get up on her. I watched them as they were on top of each other for 5 minutes. I didn't want to knock on the door so that Mrs. Mariah would not think that I saw what they were doing, and I didn't know what to tell my mom when I returned home. I stood at the window and watched them till they finished what they were doing. When I saw that Mr. John was not on top of Mrs. Mariah anymore, I went to the door and knocked. This time, Mrs. Mariah answered. She was sweating profusely because of what she had just done. As soon as she came out, I told her what my mom said I should tell her. She sent me back to my mom. She said I should tell my mom that she will see her before leaving. Immediately I heard that I left her presence, and I made my way back to her house. When I got home, my mom asked me why I stayed that long. It was a question I expected, so I prepared for it. I told my mom that I helped Mr. John do some home chores. I told her when I got there, Mrs. Mariah was the one doing the home chores, so I joined her. I told her that Mrs. Mariah promised to stop by when she is going to her house. 2 hours after, Mrs. Mariah came to our house in the company of Mr. John. You could see how happy they were. When Mr. John noticed that Mrs. Mariah and my mom were engaged in a conversation, he sneaked out without anyone noticing. When my mom looked back, she didn't see Mr. John. She asked me where he was and I told her that I did not know when he left. When my mom knew that Mr. John had left, she changed the topic of the conversation to what happened at Mr. John's house. She asked her friend what went down there. Mrs. Mariah said nothing went down. She said Mr. John told her he wants them to be more than friends. He said if she agrees to his proposal, he will get married to her very soon. My mom was surprised by what she heard because since she knew Mr. John, he has never talked to her about marriage, nor has she seen him with a woman in his house before. She told Mrs. Mariah that she cannot count the number of times that my dad has told him to get a woman. My mom asked Mrs. Mariah about what Mr. John told her. Mrs. Mariah said she likes him but she wants to take her time before making a decision. She said my mom knows how much pain men have caused her, so she wants to take her time before taking any decision this time around. My mom told her that she understood everything she has said perfectly. She told her that since she met Mr. John, she doesn't know him to be a bad person. She has always known him to be a person of impeccable character and moral uprightness. She told Mrs. Mariah that one of the reasons Mr. John and her husband are so close is because of his moral uprightness. While Mrs. Mariah was leaving, my mom urged her to think about it very well and make the best decision that will suit her and her career. Mrs. Mariah appreciated my mom for her advice, and she promised to make the best decision for herself. When Mrs. Mariah left, I kept remembering the scenes I saw in Mr. John's house. At first, I thought she was going to tell my mom when she asked her what happened in Mr. John's house. My dad arrived at exactly 7 p.m. As soon as he took his shower and settled in the dining, my mom began to tell him what happened between Mr. John and Mrs. Mariah. She told him that for the first time, Mr. John is taking steps to become a married man. My dad was happy with what he heard. He said he cannot wait for his friend to become a married man. 1 week after, Mrs. Mariah called my mom. She told my mom she has finally decided to agree with Mr. John's proposal. She said she will call him in the evening after work to tell him. My mom appreciated her. She said it's a decision she won't regret presently or in the future. When Mr. John left his workplace, he stopped at our house. When he entered our house, my mom was expecting him to talk about Mrs. Mariah, but he didn't. My dad wanted to ask him, but my mom cautioned him silently. She whispered to him not to ask him. While Mr. John was discussing with my parents, his phone rang. He brought out his phone, but he did not answer the call. The call came in the second time, but he didn't answer the call again. At that point, Mr. John became uncomfortable. He wasn't flowing with the conversation anymore. You could see that he wanted to leave urgently, but he didn't know how to excuse himself. When my mom noticed that, she went inside her room and called my father. My father didn't want to leave his seat, but she kept calling him repeatedly. When my dad left his seat to attend to my mom, Mr. John immediately took his leave. When my dad entered my mom's room, she told him that she called him so that Mr. John can be able to leave. She told him that it seems the person that was calling him repeatedly is Mrs. Mariah. She told my dad that she has something important to tell Mr. John. Before my dad and my mom returned to the sitting room, they did not meet Mr. John. When John got home, he immediately put a call through to Mariah. He wanted to apologize to her for not picking her call, but she told him not to worry. She told him she knew he was with my parent, which was why he did not answer his call. Mr. John became relieved when he heard that. Mrs. Mariah said she called to discuss an important issue with him. She said she has been thinking of what he told her since the day she came to her house. She said it's a tough decision for her to take because she has suffered a lot. She said the decision she was about to take now was aided by my mom. She said my mom told her how upright and moral he was. She said she has agreed to his proposal. She said she hopes it's a decision she doesn't regret whether presently or in the future. Upon hearing what Mrs. Mariah said, Mr. John jumped for joy. He told Mrs. Mariah that she told him had made his day. He said this was probably his best day on earth. The next day, Mr. John came to our house with a smiling face. He was so happy that you could see it on his face. He didn't know that my parents knew what was making him smile, but they just pretended as if they didn't know anything. He and my parents started their conversation as usual. A few minutes into the conversation, he got a call. He brought out his phone and checked who was calling him. When he saw that the call was from Mrs. Mariah, he returned his phone to his pocket and silenced it. My parents were expecting him to talk about what Mrs. Mariah told him, but he didn't say anything. A few minutes after, he excused himself. When he went out, I saw him talking to Mrs. Mariah on his phone. After talking for more than 15 minutes on his phone, he returned to the sitting room to join my parents. When he entered, my mom asked him who he was talking to on the phone that kept him outside for so long. At that point, he decided to let the cat out of the bag, not knowing that my parents were aware of everything that happened. Mr. John said it was Mrs. Mariah that kept him out for so long. He said she has agreed to have an affair with him. My parents pretended as if they didn't know anything and jumped for joy. They congratulated Mr. John and urged him to make the wedding as fast as possible. 2 weeks after, Mr. John came to our house very early in the morning. He said he wants my dad to follow him to Mrs. Mariah's family house. He said Mrs. Mariah has told her parents about their relationship, and they have requested to see him. He said he doesn't want to go alone because he doesn't know what is waiting for him over there. My dad rushed to the bathroom to take his bath. After taking his bath, my mom served both of them breakfast. After breakfast, they entered Mr. John's car and left. After about 6 hours, they returned home. My dad entered our house while Mr. John went to his house. As soon as my dad entered the house, he asked for his food. He said the journey they undertook was very stressful. He said they had to leave there because of the distance. When my mom gave him his food, she sat close to him on the couch. She asked him what happened, where they went to. My dad said they were welcomed very well by Mariah's parents. He said they talked about other things like the wedding date, the wedding venue, and other things related to the wedding. He said they chose Sunday, January 5, 2020 for the wedding, and the venue is the Garden Place in Alabama. As soon as she heard that from my dad, she was very happy. She picked her phone immediately and called Mrs. Mariah. She congratulated her on her upcoming wedding and urged her to take very good care of herself for her new groom. A week before the wedding, Mrs. Mariah relocated to our house because she and my mom were the ones planning the wedding. My mom was in charge of almost all of the preparations for the wedding. 3 days before the wedding, my mom was very busy like she has never been. She was going from one place to another just to make sure that the preparation is in top gear. A day before the wedding, my mother did not come home. She called my dad at around 9 p.m. that she cannot make it back home because she has a lot of things to do at the venue. She said the venue decorators and the caterers need her attention very early in the morning of the wedding. She said if she comes home, it will be difficult for her to get to the venue very early. She said if she doesn't get there early, the preparations might not go according to plan. She said it was that and other reasons that made her book a room at a nearby hotel close to the venue. My dad wished her well and told her to take very good care of herself. He said she should call him if she needs anything. On Sunday morning, which was the day of the wedding, my father woke me up from sleep very early. He told me and my sister to take our bath and join him in his car. He said we have to get to the venue of the wedding very early so that we can help my mom. I hurriedly entered my bathroom while my sister went to my mom's bathroom. After taking our bath, we changed into our wedding outfit and joined our dad in the car. After about 1 hour and 30 minutes, we arrived at the venue of the wedding. I saw my mom going from one place to another just to make sure everything is according to plan. My sister and I joined her in carrying some of the drinks she brought to a more secure place. My dad left us at the venue and went to Mr. John's hotel. After 2 hours of moving from one place to another, my mom finally settled down on a chair. She rested for 15 minutes before she went back to her hotel to take her bath and change into her wedding outfits. While she was going, she left my sister and me at the venue to monitor all the items. 30 minutes after my mom left, she returned to the venue in her wedding dress. Her dress was so beautiful that everybody she met when she came back complimented what she wore. My mom dressed as if she was the bride of the day. The wedding was colorful. People from all spheres of life attended the wedding. There was a lot to eat and drink at the wedding. The couples thrilled their guests with nice dancing moves. The highlight of the event for me was when my mom and dad were called to the dancing floor by the anchor of the event. My sister and I could not contain our joy when we saw our parents on the dance floor. My sister joined them on the dance floor, but I didn't because I was very shy. The wedding ended at about 7 p.m. As soon as the guests started leaving, the couples went to their hotel rooms. My sister and I joined my mom in cleaning and washing all the items used at the wedding. We finished the cleaning around 10 p.m. My mom suggested that we should go back to the hotel because it was late, while my dad said we can still go to our house. We left there at around 10:15 and arrived home at midnight. As soon as we got home, we all went to our rooms. None of us woke up until 11 a.m. the next day. I was the first to wake up. When I checked the time, it was 11 a.m. I was wondering how I slept for that long. I went to my parents' room to check up on them, but they were still sleeping. I left them and went to the kitchen to get something to eat. My mom woke up at exactly 12:15 p.m. She couldn't believe her eyes when she checked the time. She woke my dad, who was still enjoying his sleep. When my dad opened his eyes, he was also surprised. He said he knew he was going to be very tired after the wedding. That was why he told them at the office that he won't be coming to work. My parents woke up very hungry, so my mom had to rush to the kitchen to prepare what we are going to eat. They didn't know that I had already sorted myself out in the kitchen. Therefore, I pretended as if I hadn't eaten. At exactly 2:15 p.m., my mom served our food. We all gathered at the dining. As we were eating, we were discussing what went down at the party the previous day. Everyone was talking about their highlights of the event. My dad said his highlight of the event was when the couples were called to the dancing floor. He said he didn't believe that his friend was going to dance because, for over a decade that he has known him, he has never seen him dancing. He said he was surprised when he saw his friend rocking the dance floor with his wife. My mom said she didn't have any major highlights because she was coordinating everything from where she stood. She said she is happy that everything went according to plan. When it came to my turn to speak, I told them that my highlight of the event was when both of them were called to the dancing floor. For me, it was bigger than the bride and the groom's dance. My mom and dad laughed. They asked me why I did not join them on the dance floor. I said they knew right from the time that I am a very shy person. I cannot dance in front of a large number of people. After the meal, my dad said he still needs some sleep. As soon as he went in, my mom followed him. My sister also stood up and went to her room. I was the only one left in the sitting room. When there was nothing to do, I picked up my novel and started reading. A week after the wedding, the couples returned home. We were in the sitting room when we heard a knock on our door. I went to the door to see who was knocking. Lo and behold, I saw the couples standing in front of our door. I screamed and hugged the couples so tightly. They entered the sitting room and sat close to each other on the couch. My dad asked about their honeymoon. He said hope they enjoyed it and they replied in the affirmative. We talked about a lot of things. They appreciated my parent a lot for standing by them before, during, and after the wedding. After about 2 hours, the couple left our house. Mr. Mariah didn't go to work for the Fitz 2 weeks after the wedding. As soon as her husband leaves for work, she will come to our house. She will be at our house until 5 p.m. before she leaves. After the wedding, our relationship with the couples began to grow from strength to strength. We do almost everything together. If my father is invited to an event, he won't go except Mr. John agrees to follow him. My mom also does the same thing. 11 months after the wedding, Mrs. Mariah gave birth to a bouncing baby girl which she named Kate. The whole community was thrown into a frenzy mood with the arrival of Mrs. Mariah's daughter. As soon as she came back from the hospital, my mom moved to her house because she needed a lot of help and there was no one to help except my mother. My mom stayed with her for 1 month before returning home. Even when she returned home, she was still visiting her every day. She will go to her place in the morning and leave in the evening. My mom and Mrs. Mariah have been friends before she got married to Mr. John. The first day Mr. John saw Mrs. Mariah was in her house. These reasons and many more were my mom does not want Mrs. Mariah to experience any pain or suffering even for a second. 2 years after, Kate enrolled in my sister's school. Kate and my sister became very close because they did everything together. When Kate comes back from school, she will be with my sister in our house. Their friendship continued to grow stronger even though they were not of the same age. My sister graduated from school at 10 years old. She left Kate there who was still 7 years. My sister enrolled in St. Augustine High School after she graduated from the school. 3 years after, Kate graduated from primary school and joined my sister at St. Augustine High School. When school is on break or if Kate is free in her class, she usually goes to my sister's class to play. Soon, she started having suitors from boys in my sister's class. The first guy to approach her was Peter. One day, Kate came to my sister's class like she used to. She played with my sisters and her classmates like she used to. Peter sat somewhere waiting for Kate to leave so that he can follow her. As soon as Kate stepped her foot outside of the class, Peter followed her. While Kate was walking to her class, she heard someone calling her name from a close distance. As she turned back to see who was calling her, she met Peter standing in front of her. She asked him why he stopped her. Peter said he doesn't know where to start from. He said he has been taking a close look at her since she has been coming to their class. He said he has been waiting for the right time to tell her what he wants to tell her. He said he felt now is the right time. He said he wants her to know that he loves her and will do everything to have her. Kate looked at him and laughed. She said she appreciated him for having the courage to come to her, but she doesn't think she can have a relationship with him. Peter asked if she has anyone she was dating. She said that is not Peter's business. Peter said he will give her time to think about what he told her. He said maybe if she thinks about it, she might make a decision that will favor him. Kate said she doesn't need to think about anything. She said she has already taken her decision and her decision cannot change. Peter left Kate's presence heartbroken. He went to his class and sat alone without talking to anyone. His classmates kept asking him what happened to him, but he refused to talk to anyone. When Kate and my sister were going home after school, she narrated everything that happened with Peter to my sister. She told her how Peter approached her when she left their class. and she told her that she let him know immediately that she cannot date him. My sister said that was why he was moody and refused to anybody in the class. The next day, my sister went to Peter and told him that she knew why he was moody yesterday. She told him that Kate told her everything. Peter said he knew Kate would tell her because they are close friends. Peter told my sister to help him talk to Kate. He said if Kate agrees to date him, he would give my sister a wonderful gift. My sister told Peter to forget about Kate. She told Peter that she knows Kate very well. She said once Kate takes a decision, she doesn't change it. She told Peter to look elsewhere. 2 weeks after, another guy approached Kate. This time around, it was a guy in the senior class. He has been watching Kate for a long and he decided that day was the day he would do the needful. John waited for the school to close before approaching Kate. While Kate and my sister were going home, as usual, John stopped them. He asked Kate if he could speak to her for a few minutes. Kate told my sister to wait for her while she joined John. When she walked to where he was, she asked him why he stopped her. John said he knew she is going home, but he has to tell her what he has been craving to tell her for months. Kate asked him what he has been craving to tell her. John said he wants to go straight to the point because he doesn't want to waste her time. John told Kate that he loved her the first day she was brought to the school. He said, since then, he has been waiting for a day like this. He said he is a shy person, but he just summoned the courage to approach her today. John was a handsome boy, so almost every girl liked him. Kate told him that she has heard what he said. She said she will think about it and let him know her decision. Kate hurriedly joined my sister, and they continued their journey home. My sister asked Kate what John told her. Kate told my sister to guess what she thinks John told her. My sister said John wants to date her. Kate smiled and replied in the affirmative. My sister asked Kate what she thinks about John. Kate said she likes him. She said if she doesn't like him, she would have told him immediately that she is not interested. Kate said she will wait for 3 days or 1 week before accepting his proposal. 1 week after, Kate accepted John's proposal and they started dating. They were the topic of discussion in the school as they are seen in every place together. One day, Kate invited John to her house because she knew her parent would not be at home. When John arrived, he met Kate and my sister in the room. Unfortunately, Kate received a call from her mother that she should come and meet her in front of a mall. She left the house leaving John and my sister in the room. 5 minutes after Kate left, my sister and Peter were already having sex. I caught them when my mom told me to help her call my sister. When I got to the door, I saw them kissing. They were so engulfed in the kissing that they did not know when I entered. As soon as I saw them, I made my way out of the room. I stood in front of the door and I was watching how they were kissing themselves. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this.
My mom was born into a practicing Christian family. She spent most of her life in the church. She had a room in the church then where she passed the night when there is a program at church. At some point, she was the leader of the choir. My mom was very close to the head pastor, Mr. Brown. Pastor Brown liked my mom because of her energy and participating in church activities. My mom's church does not have a school at first, so whenever there is a program at church, as soon as my mom leaves school, she heads straight to church. After several consultations, the church decided to build a school for the children of its members. Before my mom graduated from junior secondary school, the school was completed. So, she decided to leave St. Chris High School and enroll in the school built in her church. The church named the school the School of Worship. The launching of the school was a memorable event. Dignitaries from all parts of the country attended the launch. Dignitaries were thrilled to melodious songs by my mom and other members of the choir group. My mom received a lot of gifts from the dignitaries because of her melodious voice. After the launch, my mom traveled to a church program alongside members of her choir group. They went to a program in Miami that had all churches in attendance. The program was designed as a competition between churches. The program was scheduled to last for 3 days because it had more than 50 churches in attendance. The program was designed to honor a Christian singer who died some weeks ago. On the day of the grand finale, 5 churches were left. The 4 churches were St. Augustine Church, the Parish of Worship, and House on the Rock Church, Praiseworthy Church, and my mom's church, the Church of Worship. The grand finale was shown live at various churches across the city. The show started with songs from the choirs of the various churches. My mom's church was scheduled to perform last. When the anchor called my mom's church on stage, the noise that emanated from the hall could not be quantified. Everybody in the hall was screaming. It took the intervention of the anchor before the noise stopped. My mom and her colleagues sang melodious songs. Everybody was on their feet clapping when my mom and her colleagues were walking off the stage. After the performance, the judges went into a closed-door meeting to select the winner of the competition. 1 hour after, the judges came back to the hall. The chief judge appreciated the churches that participated in the competition, especially those that made it to the final. He said they have all performed well, but it's unfortunate that there can only be one winner. He urged the church that will be announced as winners of the competition should be magnanimous in victory, while others should prepare for the next event because it will be held annually. The chief judge of the competition invited two dignitaries, Mr. Ryan Patrick and Mrs. Mariah Solomon, to the stage for the presentation of prizes to the winners. The chief judge told everybody to remain silent because the result is about to be announced. The chief judge said, "In the fifth position goes to St. Augustine Church." The announcement was met with a huge round of applause from the audience. The chief judge invited their lead choir to come and collect their prize. The lead choir joined Mr. Ryan Patrick and Mrs. Mariah Solomon on stage. She took a photograph with them and she was given her prize. Her colleagues were also invited to the podium to take photographs with the two dignitaries. The audience kept quiet in anticipation for the next announcement. The chief judge said the fourth position goes to the House on the Rock Church. They received a huge round of applause from the audience as they all walked to the podium to receive their prize. After receiving their prize, they took photographs with the dignitaries and the chief judge before they left the podium. The hall went silent again in anticipation of the next announcement. The chief judge said the third position goes to the Parish of Worship Church. The announcement was met with a huge round of applause by the audience. The lead choir and her colleagues made their way to the podium to receive their prize. They were handed their prize after taking photographs with the dignitaries and the chief judge. At this point, two churches were still standing: the Praiseworthy Church and the Church of Worship, which is my mom's church. This time around, it was difficult to control the audience. Those that were for my mom's church were screaming her name, while those that were for the Praiseworthy Church were also screaming. It took several pleas from the chief judge and the dignitaries to silence the audience. The chief judge said if they do not keep quiet, there is no way he can announce the winners of the competition. After several pleas, everybody kept quiet in anticipation of the announcement of the chief judge. The chief judge said there will be a slight change in the announcement. He said he has been announcing the result in descending order, but he will like to change the order of the announcement. He said instead of announcing the second position, he will move to the first position. He said what that means is that any name he mentions now is the winner. He said the remaining church is automatically the second position. The chief judge kept teasing the audience. Some of them could not sit. Some covered their eyes. The chief judge said the first position goes to the Church of Worship. The hall erupted. Even my mom's church back home erupted. The noise was out of this world. It was uncontrollable. The prize for the church in the second position was handed to them before my mom and her colleagues were called to the podium to come and receive their prizes. After receiving their prize, they took photographs with the dignitaries and the audience. The next day, they traveled back home. They were welcomed by a very huge crowd. They were hosted in the church's auditorium. A lot of people in the neighborhood who were not members of their church came to celebrate with them. At the event, the head pastor announced that everybody that participated in the competition will get an all-expense-paid trip to Spain to watch the El Clasico. The announcement received a huge round of applause from the audience. The El Clasico is unarguably the biggest derby in world football. It features the best football players from across the world. The El Clasico features players like Lionel Messi, who is arguably the best player in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo, who is also argued to be the best player in the world, Neymar, Dani Alves, Xavi Hernandez, Andres Iniesta, Luka Modric, Daniel Carvajal, Sergio Ramos, Marcelo, Jordi Alba, Gerard Piqué, Carles Puyol, Sergio Busquets, Toni Kroos, Angel Di Maria, Gareth Bale, and many other big players. My mom said she has never traveled to Spain before, so it came as a huge gift for her. 5 hours after the event, the head pastor reached out to the members that their flight is on Tuesday. All the members of the choir left the church on Monday and returned to their houses to prepare for their trip to Spain on Tuesday. When my mom got home, she did her laundry. After she finished her laundry, she packed her clothes into her bag. My mom came to the sitting room and sat down. She put on the television and started watching. While she was watching, she was anticipating her trip to Spain. She was anticipating how she will see Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, who are adjudged to be the best players on the continent. She was happy that she will see people she used to see on television in a live stadium. She sat in the sitting room until her dad arrived. When he arrived, he went to his room and changed his cloth. He later joined my mom in the sitting room. My mom told him about the preparation for her trip. While they were talking, my mom received a text message from the senior pastor that they should all meet at the church at 7 a.m. because their plane will leave by 8:30 a.m. As soon as my mom saw the message, she showed my dad. She pleaded with my dad to drop her at the church the next morning before he goes to work. Her dad agreed. The next day, my mom took her bath as early as 6 a.m. By 6:30 a.m., she was sitting in the sitting room with her bag. My head came out of his room at exactly 6:35 and they drove off to church. Her dad dropped her at the church gate at exactly 6:50 a.m. while he drove to his office. My mom entered the church and joined her colleagues who were already waiting for her at the church's auditorium. At exactly 7 a.m., they left the church to the airport. They got to the airport at exactly 8 a.m. They went to the restaurant to have breakfast while they wait to board their flight. At exactly 8:20 a.m., they boarded their flight and the plane took off at exactly 8:30 a.m. They had a lot of fun on the plane. The journey was inspiring and they entertained other passengers with their melodious songs. The plane landed in Spain at exactly 11:30 a.m. As soon as they landed at the airport in Spain, they entered into a bus that was already waiting for them. The bus conveyed them to their hotel. When they got to their hotel, they were all given different rooms. The city of Spain was buzzing in anticipation of the El Clasico. Their hotel was in Barcelona, so they met a lot of Barcelona fans. The next day, they were taken to the iconic Camp Nou stadium. They were taken through all the facilities in the stadium. After that, we went to the training pitch where the Barcelona players were preparing for the big match on Sunday. After they watched the training, they went to a nearby restaurant to have a meal. We went around the city until late in the evening before we returned to our hotel. The next day, we were taken to the iconic Santiago Bernabéu Stadium. The stadium has witnessed a lot of Champions League and European Cup finals. Their first point of call when we arrived at the stadium was the trophy cabinet. They saw different types of trophies which include the Champions League, the La Liga, the European Cup, the Club World Cup, and the Copa del Rey. When we left the trophy cabinet, we were taken to the women's football team training pitch. We watched the women train. When they finished their training, they took pictures with all the players. From there, we went to the men's training pitch. The men's training pitch was filled. All the fans wanted to have a feel of the training before the players leave for Barcelona. After the training, fans were allowed to take photographs with the players. They waited until every fan took pictures before we took ours. They got a signed jersey from Sergio Ramos, who was the captain of Real Madrid. They left the training pitch and headed straight to the Madrid restaurant to have our lunch. They ate different types of food. We all ate to our satisfaction. After the meal, they went around the neighborhood. At exactly 6 p.m., they gathered at our car park and drove back to our hotel. As soon as they got to our hotel, they all went to our respective rooms and slept off because we were all tired. The next day, they didn't go out at all. We stayed in our hotel all through because we had a guest. Their guest was the lead singer of the biggest church in Spain. They had a good time with him. He thrilled them to a lot of melodious tunes alongside his band members. After the songs, they were allowed to ask him questions. He answered all their questions before he left. On Sunday, they all woke up very early. It was the D-Day. They were very happy because it was what they came to Spain for. The match was slated for 4 p.m., but they were told to leave their hotel as early as 11 a.m. because of the crowd that will be on the streets and the crowd outside the stadium. By 8 a.m., they had all taken their baths. They were served breakfast at exactly 9 a.m. They sat in their hotel room waiting for the bus that will convey them to the stadium to arrive. At exactly 11 a.m., their bus arrived. They all left their hotel room and entered the bus. The bus left the hotel at exactly 11:05 a.m. They didn't arrive at the stadium until 1 p.m. A ride of 30 minutes lasted for almost 2 hours. When they got to the stadium, they met another huge crowd trying to gain access to the stadium. The 4 gates that entered the stadium had a long queue. At going back and forth, they settled for one. They all queued at the second gate. The queue kept moving slowly until it got to them at around 3 p.m. When they gained access into the stadium, the players were already on the pitch doing their pre-match warm-up. Because of the crowd, they were advised to seat close to one another so that they wouldn't have to be looking for anybody after the match. At exactly 4 p.m., the players walked onto the pitch. The Barcelona players sang their club's anthem, which was followed by Real Madrid's club anthem. After the anthems of both clubs, the referee invited the captains of both clubs to the center circle. He asked them to choose each side of a coin so that he can decide which position each team will take and which team will pass the ball first. After the tossing of the coin, Barcelona was to pass the ball first. The 2 captains left the referee and joined their teammates for a photo session. After the photo session, the players of each team went round the stadium to appreciate their fans. The match started at exactly 4:10 p.m. The first 20 minutes was all about Real Madrid. From where they were sitting, they could hear the noise of the away fans. 30 minutes into the match, Lionel Messi received a pass from Xavi Hernandez. He was through on goal before he was fouled by Real Madrid's captain Sergio Ramos. Sergio Ramos got a yellow card while Barcelona got a free kick right in front of Real Madrid's box. As soon as Lionel Messi stood behind the free kick, the away stand became silent. Barcelona fans regained their lost voice. After Lionel Messi positioned the ball, the referee blew his whistle. As Lionel Messi took the free kick, it landed in the Madrid net. The stadium erupted in jubilation. Barcelona fans took over the stadium. After 45 minutes, the referee blew the whistle for the end of the first half. As soon as the players went into the dressing room, Chris Brown mounted the stage. He thrilled the fans for 15 minutes before the players made their way back onto the pitch. At exactly 5:05 p.m., the referee blew the whistle for the commencement of the second half. The second started with Madrid on top as they did in the first half. They were playing very well, but they couldn't get a goal. 60 minutes into the match, Barcelona Football Club got a penalty against the run of play. Once again, Lionel Messi stood behind the ball. As soon as the referee blew his whistle, Lionel Messi kicked the penalty and it landed in Madrid's net. At that point, it looked like all hope was lost for Madrid until they got a penalty in the 80th minute. Cristiano Ronaldo took the ball and placed it on the penalty spot. As soon as the referee blew his whistle, Cristiano Ronaldo kicked the ball and it landed in Barcelona's Football Club's net. Madrid continued to search for the equalizer, which made them commit a lot of players forward. In the 89th minute, Real Madrid Football Club got a corner kick. All their players went forward, including the goalkeeper. As soon as the corner kick was taken, it fell in the hand of the Barcelona Football Club goalkeeper. As soon as he caught the ball, he kicked it to Lionel Messi, who was standing alone in Real Madrid Football Club's half. As soon as the ball landed on his feet, he kicked it into an empty net, which gave Barcelona Football Club 3-1 advantage. Real Madrid Football Club players took the ball to the center pitch and restarted the game. 30 seconds after they restarted the game, the referee blew his whistle for the end of the game. Barcelona Football Club supporters continued their celebration while Real Madrid fans exited the stadium. My mom and her colleagues watched the celebration before they were called. They left the stadium at 7 p.m. It was difficult for cars to get access to the roads because of the number of people on the road. They struggled with people on the road before they finally arrived at their hotel at 9:30 p.m. As soon as they came down from the bus, everyone went to their hotel rooms. The tiredness was on everyone's face. There was no time for any chat. They all entered their room and slept off. The next day, most of them didn't wake up early. They were supposed to leave the next day, but they couldn't because most of them were not prepared. Fortunately for them, their visa and tickets were not ready. Most of them spent the day doing laundry and packing their clothes into their bags. Around 8 p.m., their visa and tickets were brought to them. According to their tickets, their flight was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next day. As soon as they received their tickets, they contacted the driver of the bus that has been taking them around the city since they arrived. They told the driver to come to the hotel as early as 7:30 a.m. to pick them. There were no time for a chat that night because everybody went to bed early in anticipation of the next day's trip. The next day, they all woke up when the alarm ranged at 5:30 a.m. They all took their baths and sat in their rooms waiting for the arrival of the bus driver. The bus driver arrived at exactly 7:25 a.m. As soon as he arrived, they entered the bus and left for the airport. They arrived at the airport at exactly 8 a.m. They went to the restaurant to eat breakfast because they did not eat before they left the hotel. At exactly 9:45 a.m., they all boarded the flight. The plane left Spain at exactly 10 a.m. and landed in the United States of America at exactly 1 p.m. As soon as they landed in the United States of America, they all went to the church to appreciate the head pastor. The head pastor was very happy to see them. He asked them about their short stay in Spain. They told him everything that happened in Spain. They told him about the culture, food, and the people of Spain. They told him about the El Clasico too. They said since they were born, they have never seen a football match like the El Clasico. The head pastor said he deliberately chose Spain for them because he knew they will enjoy their stay in Spain. He told them about his visit to Spain for the first time. He said his first visit to Spain was during the El Clasico and he enjoyed it. He said since then, he has only missed the El Clasico twice. He urged them to keep up the good work that earned them the visit to Spain. He promised them another big prize if they represent the church very well in the next competition. They all thanked the head pastor and they all left for their homes. When my mom got home, she was welcomed by everyone in the neighborhood. She received a lot of gifts from people for her outstanding performance at the competition. My mom went to bed as early as 8 p.m. that day because she was tired. The next day, my mom woke up very late. When she woke up, she did her laundry in preparation for school on Monday. The next Monday, my mom resumed at our church's school. All students gathered at the assembly ground at exactly 7:30. They sang worship songs, the national anthem. The head pastor himself was on the assembly ground. He taught students the school anthem that he composed. After that, he addressed all students on the assembly ground. He urged them to take their academics seriously. He said he wants them to make the school and their parents proud. After addressing them, he told them to walk to their classes. When they got to their class, the head pastor went round the classes to introduce the new teachers to the students. After the introduction, normal school activities commenced. While lectures were going on, my mom took permission from her class teacher to visit the toilet. While she was walking to the toilet, she came in contact with the head pastor who was going around the school to monitor all activities. The head pastor asked my mom what she was doing outside. She told him that she took permission from her class teacher before she went out. While my mom was walking to the toilet, the head pastor could not take his eyes off her ass. My mom had a very big ass which was admired by a lot of men. The head pastor waited for my mom. When she was returning to her class, he called her. He said when she gets to class, she should inform her class teacher that she was summoned by him. He said as soon as she delivers the message to her class teacher, she should come straight to his office. The head pastor did that to avoid suspicion. When my mom got to her class, she delivered the message to her class teacher. Since it was the head pastor, her class teacher had nothing to say. My mom left her class and made her way to the head pastor's office. When she got to the door, she knocked. The head pastor asked who was at the door. My mom replied. As soon as he heard my mom's voice, he told her to come inside. When my mom opened the door, she met the head pastor sitting on his chair. She stood close to his table waiting to hear what she wants to say. The head pastor didn't want to see her standing, therefore, he told her to sit. As soon as my mom sat, the head pastor started talking. He told my mom that what he is about to tell her might surprise her, but it is how he feels. He said he knows she won't expect what he wants to stay from someone like him, but he cannot keep it to himself anymore. The head pastor said he has been admiring my mom since she was very young. He said he is happy to see her grow and become the woman that she is now. He said the summary of what he wants to tell her is that he loves her. My mom was shocked. It wasn't something she was expecting from him. My mom said he has a wife. What does he want to do about his wife? The pastor said he is not divorcing his wife, and he is not marrying my mom. He just wants them to be very close. While the head pastor was talking, he stood up from his seat and went very close to my mom. He kept staring at her boobs because she had a loose button. The boobs were inviting. Suddenly, he dipped his hands in my mother's shirt and pressed her boobs. At first, my mother was trying to resist, but when the pressing continued, she didn't know when she started moaning softly. The head pastor continued. He continued pressing her boobs while he was kissing her in her mouth. After some minutes, he removed my mom's shirt completely. He had sex with my mom in his office. They stopped when they heard the bell. My mom and the head pastor continued to have sex in school until my mom graduated. Even after her graduation, they were still having sex. When my mom got admission into college, the head pastor usually sneak out of the church to go and have sex with my mom in her school. All this was going on and nobody knew. 2 years after my mom left college, she got married. The head pastor was the presiding pastor on the wedding day. He said a lot of things about having sex outside marriage. His sermon attracted a huge round of applause from the crowd that was present at the wedding. After my mom got married, she was still having sex with the head pastor. It was easy for her to leave the house to go and meet the head pastor because of her position in the church. Whenever she tells my dad that she has a church program, he doesn't stop her. He knew her very well before he married her. He knew she doesn't joke with church activities. A year after my mom's wedding, she got pregnant. At the early stage of the pregnancy, she was still having sex with the head pastor. But when the pregnancy got to an advanced stage, they stopped having sex. 9 months after, my mom gave birth to me. Once again, the head pastor was the presiding pastor on the day of my naming ceremony. He congratulated my mom and urged others to emulate my mom. He praised her commitment to the activities of the church. 2 years after, I joined the school in our church. My mom used to drive me to school so that she could see the head pastor. Even when my mother gave birth, she didn't stop having sex with the head pastor. The most interesting thing is that they were having sex for years and nobody knew. Nobody ever suspected them. Everybody thought my mom was always in the church because of church programs. While I was preparing for my final exam, my mom was coming to school regularly because the church had an end-of-the-year event. The head pastor chose a 30-member committee which my mom was the chairman. Because of her position, she was always in church. When I come out of my class, I used to see my mom in the school compound. I will see her doing one thing or another. When I see her on most occasions, I usually scream her name from afar, and she will wave at me. Most times, she doesn't have time to talk to me because she is doing one thing or another. One day, the school closed very early because we were told to go home and prepare for our test. When I came out of my class, I searched for my mom everywhere around the church premises, but I didn't see her. I went to the room that was given to her by the church, but I didn't see her. When I searched for her everywhere and I didn't see her, I sat on a chair waiting for her to appear. 20 minutes after, my mom was still nowhere to be found. While I was sitting on the chair, I saw one of the workers in the church. She asked me while I was sitting there lonely when every student has gone home. I told her my mom was supposed to take me home, but I can't find her. I told her that I have searched everywhere in the church, but she is nowhere to be found. The woman said it seems she saw her walking to the head pastor's office. She asked me whether I have checked her at the head pastor's office. I said I haven't. She said since I should check her in the head pastor's office. I appreciated the woman while I made my way to the head pastor's office. About 5 steps to the pastor's office, I started hearing my mom's voice. She was laughing heavily. I didn't know what could be happening in the pastor's office that would warrant such a laugh. When I got to the door, I started ta-ta-ta-ta like someone was clapping. I wondered what could be happening. The sound continued for minutes. I wanted to know what was happening in the room. I went to the back of the office and piped through the window. I was shocked by what I saw. I saw the head pastor and my mom having serious sex. You could see in their faces how they were enjoying it. After I watched to my satisfaction, I went back to the door and knocked. As soon as they hear the knock, they stopped. They asked who was at the gate. I replied. When they heard my voice, they were shocked. They quickly dressed up and opened the door. My mom asked me why I came to the head pastor's office. I said I have been looking for her since the school closed but I didn't see her. I said it was one of the workers that said I should check for her at the head pastor's office. My mom was not sure if I saw what happened or not. She was moody till we got home. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
How I caught Mr. John and Miss Eva on my first day in school. When you meet some people, you begin to think they do not have feelings because of the way they act when they are around the opposite sex. People like that are always found in each organization, society, workplace, or home. I know you have started guessing what I am talking about, but you need to read my entire story to completely know what I am saying. This story is based on what happened in my high school. My name is Sophia. I am a teenager who just entered high school after completing my primary education. When I completed my primary education, I was spoilt of choices on the secondary school to attend because there were many schools close to my locality. After taking my time to inspect all the schools and their facilities, I finally settled for St. Peter's High School. My dad and my mum allowed me to choose the high school I wanted to attend. The same cannot be said of my friends. Most of them had to settle for the schools their parents chose for them. I chose Monday to inspect the schools. I visited all the schools in my locality on Monday, but I had to return to St. Peter's on Friday because it was the school that caught my attention the most during my inspection on Monday. My visit to St. Peter's on Friday cemented my choice. At that point, there was no going back. It was either St. Peter's or nothing. I waited for my father to return from work on Friday so that I can inform him. My father usually returns from work every Friday because his office is far from our house. He leaves home very early on Monday and returns every Friday. When I heard the sound of my father's car on Friday, I ran outside to welcome him like I always do. We both hugged each other and I collected his bag and his shoes. I took his bag and his shoes inside while he was talking to one of our neighbors. I sat on the couch patiently, waiting for when my father will enter the room. As soon as my father entered the room, he went straight to the bathroom to have a bath. After bathing, he came to the kitchen to have his dinner that was already served by my mom. You could see that my father was very hungry from the way he was eating his food. I wanted to engage him in a conversation when he was eating, but I knew I would not get his 100% concentration because of the hunger. I sat patiently on the couch waiting for my father to finish eating his food. After 15 minutes, I noticed that my dad was now satisfied. He was already engaging my mom in a conversation. He and my mom were talking about what happened at his office. He was telling my mom how the week was very stressful. After all, he had to attend to a lot of files because his boss did not show up at the office throughout the week due. My mom also told him that she had a stressful week at the office too. She said her company got submitted and defended a proposal. She said she and one of her colleagues were the ones saddled with the responsibility of defending the proposal. My dad asked her if they have been awarded the project. She said the company is still assessing the performance of all the companies that submitted a proposal. I lied on the couch when I noticed that their conversation was getting longer than expected. All I had in mind was that I will inform him about my choice of school before he goes to bed. After about 2 hours, my dad left the dining and joined me on the couch. I told him how I have been waiting for him for the past 1 hour. He asked me why I was waiting for him and I told him that I have something important to tell him. I noticed that my dad exhibited fear on his face because I am not the type that gets serious when talking to him. I always laugh when I want to talk to him. Therefore, the seriousness that I put on made him exhibit fear. On my own, I deliberately put up a serious face because I didn't want him to reject my choice. I wanted him to see some element of seriousness in me. I told him it was about my school. He asked me if I have finally chosen a high school I will attend when school resumes. I told him that I have found one. He asked me the name of the school and where the school is located. I told him the name of the school is St. Peter's High School. I do not need to tell him the location because he knows the school very well. He usually drives past the school when he is going to work. He asked me why I chose St. Peter's High School instead of other schools in our locality. I told him that I inspected all the schools in our locality one after the other. I said I chose St. Peter's High School because I felt St. Peter's High School is better than the others in terms of infrastructure and many other things. I told him I will be happy if he allows me to go to St. Peter's. My dad was silent for some seconds. I asked him why he was silent. He was just looking at me. After some minutes, my dad finally agreed. He said since St. Peter's High School is my choice, he is good with it. He said he just wants to be sure whether I have chosen the best. I explained to him why I think St. Peter's is the best. I told him how I visited the entire school one after the other before I finally made my decision. My dad said it is good. I got up from where I was seating and hugged him. My dad said he was going to personally drive me to the school the next Monday to make inquiries about the school. I couldn't contain my joy as I made my way to my room. When I entered my room, I lied down on my bed hoping that the next day will be Monday. I woke up the next morning with a big smile on my face. The smile was so huge that my parents noticed it. My dad asked me why I was so happy. I told him I can't wait to go with him to St. Peter's High School on Monday. I told him how the house has been boring since I started staying at home. A few minutes into the discussion with my dad, my mum called us to the dining. She has prepared tea and bread for us. My dad and I joined my mum in the dining and we continued our discussion. After the meal, we returned to the sitting room to watch a movie. My dad relaxes during the weekends by watching different movies. My dad and I watched movies for more than 5 hours before he stepped out to see his friend. I wanted to follow him because I know how boring the house will be. But my father declined. When my dad left, I returned to my room and continued with the novel I was reading. I read the novel till late in the night. I left my room when my mom called me that dinner has been served. My dad was also back from where he went to. I joined my parents at the dining and we all had dinner together. After the meal, I waved my parents goodnight as they made their way into their room. They waved me goodnight too and they told me not to forget my prayer before I sleep. As soon as I entered my room, I picked up my novel from where I left because I wanted to read it completely before the next day. The next day is Sunday and it's always a busy day for the family because we usually leave home very early for church and we will return very late in the night. I read my novel until around 3 a.m. before I decided to sleep, knowing fully well that the remaining chapters of the novel would not take me more than 20 minutes to complete. At exactly 7 a.m., I heard a knock on my door. I knew it was my parents. They want to wake me up so that I can get ready for church because we usually leave home by 7:30 a.m. I didn't want to leave my bed because I was still feeling sleepy. The sleep I had at the time they came knocking was not more than 4 hours. My parents continued knocking repeatedly when they noticed that I did not leave my bed. When the knocks became unbearable, I had no option but to leave my bed. I stood up from my bed and made my way to the door. When I opened my door, I met my parents standing in front of my door waiting for me to come out. My father asked me why it took so long for me to open the door. I told him I was fast asleep because I slept very late. My father asked me why I slept very late when I knew there was church service the next day. I closed the door and rushed to the bathroom because my parents were already waiting. After taking my bath, I picked up one of my clothes and I rushed outside to meet my parents who were already waiting for me. We prayed in the sitting room and we all made our way to the car. We entered the car and my dad drove off. While driving, my dad told me how important it was for me to sleep early. He said as a teenager, I need 8 hours or more of sleeping time. He said he was not happy with me because I almost made him and my mum late for church. My parents like going to church very early because they are part of the church executives. Church executives are expected to be at the church 30 minutes before the church program starts. I told my father that I was sorry. I told him that I will not repeat such. My father said he has accepted my apology, but he wants to tell me some of the dangers of lack of having proper night rest. I told him that I was listening. My father said there are short-term and long-term dangers of lack of proper sleep. He said the short dangers are a lack of alertness. He said missing 2 hours from the recommended 8 hours can have an impact on the feeling of an individual. He said another short-term danger is excessive sleeping during the daytime. He said if care is not taken, I won't be able to participate in any church activity today. I told him I will make sure I participate in all church programs. I said my lack of sleep will not hinder my performance in church. My father continued with his lecture. He said another short-term danger of lack of proper night rest is that it can lead to road accidents if the individual is the one driving. My father said even if he had taught me how to drive before today, he wouldn't have allowed me to drive the car as soon as he noticed that I did not sleep very well the previous night. My father said all the dangers he listed are short-term dangers. He said others that are more dangerous than the ones he has mentioned. He said we will continue with that when we are heading back home. As soon as we drove into the church, my dad and my mom rushed out of the vehicle to join the church executives meeting which had already started. I went into the church to wait for when church service will commence because church service usually commences after the executive meeting. After about 15 minutes, the executives' meeting ended and all the executives made their way into an already filled church. The service started with an opening prayer by the presiding bishop. After that, other church activities followed. I noticed that my father was looking at me when the church service was going on. He wanted to be sure that I was not sleeping. Although I was feeling sleepy, I composed myself because I didn't want my dad to catch me sleeping. I know if he does, I will be the topic of discussion in the house. I was the topic of discussion in the car, but I didn't want my case to extend to the house. I did all my best to participate actively in all the church activities. After about 6 hours, the church program ended, and it was time to go home. When my dad told me that it was time to go home, 2 things came to my mind. The first was that I was happy because I will have the opportunity to sleep when I get home. The second thought was how will I be able to endure the series of the lecture that will come up in the car. My father didn't complete his lecture when we were driving to church in the morning and he promised to continue on our way home. I know my dad never forgets, so I couldn't pray for him to forget. I entered the car thinking how I was going to endure another series of lectures. As soon as I entered, we drove off. My father was silent for a few minutes. At first, I thought he has forgotten what he promised to talk about. No sooner than my mom told my dad that she was tired than he began his lecture again. He called me by my name, Mariah. He said we were talking about something when we were driving to church in the morning. I told him that we were talking about the dangers associated with a lack of having proper night rest. I reminded him that he has told me about the short-term dangers. I said it's the long-term dangers that he promised to talk about when we are heading back home. My dad was impressed, thinking I enjoyed the morning lecture. He didn't know how boring it sounded to me. He didn't know that I had to listen because there was nothing I could do. He didn't know that if I had an option, I wouldn't step out of the house in the morning, not to talk of listening to a very long lecture. The reminder gave him the impression that I enjoyed the lecture, and you could see from his face that he was willing to continue. He started the second phase of the lecture by asking me if I understood everything he said in the morning while we were driving to church. I told him that I understood everything perfectly. Then, he began with the long-term dangers. He said one of the long-term dangers of lacking proper night rest is high blood pressure. He said others are diabetes, heart attack, heart failure or stroke, obesity, depression, impairment in immunity, low sex drive, premature wrinkling and dark circles under the eyes, increase in the stress hormone, and cortisol in the body. He said there are many other dangers, but these are the ones he can tell me for now. He said all these diseases are very difficult to cure. He said if a patient contract all the diseases he mentioned, it is very difficult to treat them completely. He said in most cases, the patient will have to be living with the disease until he or she dies. He asked me if I will want to contact any of these diseases at a young age. I told him that I do not want to. He said if I do not want to contract any of those diseases, I have to be sleeping at least 8 hours every day. He said if I am watching a movie or reading a book, I should drop whatever I am doing when it is time for bed. He said the movie I am watching or the book I am reading won't go anywhere. He said I can continue with my movie or my book when I wake up the next day. At first, I wasn't interested in the lecture, but when I started realizing that what my dad was telling is right, I started paying attention. I appreciated him and I told him I will heed all his advice. My dad said he will end his lecture with some tips on how to sleep better. He said if I want to sleep better, I should follow some of this advice. He said I should treat getting enough sleep as if it is important. He said, for now, I have the opportunity of choosing when to sleep because I do not have a job that can stop me. He said I should schedule an adequate time for sleep. He said another tip is to keep a consistent wake time. He said I should wake up at the same time every day. He said waking up at the same time every day will help you sleep better at night. He said a fixed wake time helps to build a strong desire throughout wakefulness. He said keeping a consistent wake time gradually builds, and shortening it by sleeping will make it harder to fall asleep the next night. He said another very important tip is to put my phones and my novels away as soon as it's time for sleep. He said books and phones keep the mind humming and far from the relaxed state that the body needs before bedtime. He said I should keep my books and my phone far away an hour before my bedtime. I appreciated my dad for the lecture as we made our way into our compound. We all came down from the car and we entered the house. We were all hungry, so my mom rushed into the kitchen while my dad and I sat on the couch. My dad put on the television set because he wanted to watch a football match between Manchester United and Arsenal. My father doesn't miss Arsenal matches because he is a very big fan. He is always in a joyous mood anytime Arsenal wins a match. One of the best times to collect money from my dad is when Arsenal wins a match. There was still 30 minutes before the start of the match, so my dad left the television set and picked up the iron and went to the laundry room to prepare the clothes he will use at work for the week. My dad likes to do his things by himself, so my mom does not bother herself with his office wear. 5 minutes to the commencement of the match, my father left the cloth he was ironing and rushed down to the sitting room. My mom called me to join her in the dining, but he declined. He told my mom to bring his food for him in the sitting room. My dad does not like any disturbance when it's time to watch Arsenal Football Club. My mom had no option but to bring his food to the sitting room. As soon as she served him his food, she went back to her room because she doesn't like football. A few minutes into the match, you could see how uncomfortable my dad was because Manchester United was playing better than Arsenal. He kept shouting at the players even though they could not hear him. 20 minutes into the match, Manchester United scored through Fred. The goal changed my dad's mood. I looked at him and I saw how sad he was. The food my mom served him was still in his front. He hadn't eaten more than 3 or 4 spoons. 45 minutes after, the referee blew the whistle for halftime. I told my dad to eat his food before the commencement of the second half because I know if Arsenal loses after 90 minutes, my dad might not eat his food. He picked up his food and started eating. I went to the fridge to help him get a chilled drink. He ate the food and he took the drink. He slept on the couch waiting for the second half to commence. As soon as the players started making their way into the pitch, my dad stooped up from his sleeping position and sat down. The referee blew the whistle for the commencement of the second half. No sooner than the second half began than my father began to shout at the players. I kept telling him that the people he was shouting at cannot hear what he was saying. 65 minutes into the match, Arsenal equalized through Ben White. My dad jumped for joy as Ben White headed the ball into the net. The match continued and there was no goal until 80 minutes. 88 minutes into the match, Arsenal took the lead through Gabriel. My dad couldn't contain his joy. He was laughing uncontrollably. He told me to get him a bottle of wine from the fridge for celebration. After the 3 minutes of added time, the referee blew his whistle for full time. My dad jumped up that I had to warn him to check the ceiling fan. He opened the wine I brought for him and started drinking. He celebrated the victory until about 9 p.m. when he wanted to go to bed. As soon as I noticed that he was going to bed, I called him and reminded him that the next day is Monday. I told him that he promised to take me to St. Peter's High School to inquire about the school. My dad said he did not forget. He said there was nothing that would make him forget something like that. We waved at each other, and he entered his room while I entered mine. I was already feeling sleepy before I entered, so I lied down on my bed and covered myself with my duvet. In no time, I slept off. At exactly 5:30 a.m., my mom came to my door and knocked. As soon as I heard a knock on my door, I stood up and went to my door. When I opened my door, I saw my mom standing in front of my door. I greeted her and she responded. She said she came to wake me up so that I can prepare myself before my father wakes up. I told her that I was already awake before she came. She left my door and I closed the door. As soon as I closed the door, I took up my shirt and went into my bathroom to take my bath. When I finished taking my bath, I put on the cloth that I had already prepared to wear for the day. After that, I sprayed perfume on my body, and I sat on my bed waiting for my father to come calling. At exactly 6:50 a.m., I heard a knock on my door. I hurriedly stood to open the door. When I opened the door, I saw my father standing at the door already dressed. He told me it was time to leave. He left my door and went straight to his car. He said I should join him. I locked my door and I went to my mom's room to tell her that I was leaving. She followed me to the car and told me to take care of myself. I entered the car and we drove off. At exactly 7:15, we arrived at St. Peter's High School. My father parked his car and we both alighted from his car. When we came down, my dad asked for the head teacher's office. We were directed to the head teacher's office, but she was not on seat. We looked for a seat close to her office and sat down in anticipation of the head teacher's arrival. At exactly 7:45 a.m., the head teacher arrived. When she arrived, she was informed that she had people waiting for her, so she made her way to where we were seated. She greeted us and apologized for coming late. She opened her office and she told us to come inside. When we entered her office, she told us to sit. She gave us water to drink. After we drank the water, she asked us how she could help us. My dad told her that he wants me to join their school when the new session resumes. He told her that his visit to the school is to make an inquiry about the payment, and to personally inspect the school himself to see if the facilities they have are up to the required standard. The head teacher said she is happy to have us. She said new students are to pay $1,000 for enrollment. She said the $1,000 will cover the school fee, registration fee, and every other thing I will need for the term. My dad said it was okay. The head teacher told us to follow her so that my dad can inspect the facilities in the school. She took us to the school pitch, the health center, the school hostels, the school library, and all the classes in the school. She introduced all the staff in the school to us. I was very happy as the head teacher was showing my dad the school infrastructure. At the end of the tour, you could see from my dad's face that he was very impressed with what he saw. We returned to the head teacher's office after the tour. My dad made the payment and he left. He drove to his office while I looked for a taxi to take me home. When I got home, my mom had already prepared lunch. I rushed down to the kitchen because I was very hungry. After eating, I explained what went down to my mom. I told her how I was already anticipating resumption. The day of resumption came and I was very happy. I woke up very early because I wanted to join my dad in his car. I took my bath and I wore my cloth. I sat on the bed waiting for my dad to call me. After some minutes, I heard a knock on my door. I stood up and rushed to the door because I knew it was my dad. When I opened the door, I met my dad standing in front of my door. He told me it was time to leave for school. I went to the kitchen to pick the food that my mom prepared for me. I put the food in my bag and I joined my dad in his car. As soon as I entered the car, my dad drove off. We arrived at St. Peters High School at exactly 8 a.m. I alighted from my dad's car and we waved each other goodbye. When I entered, students were already in their class. I approached the security man for direction. He held my hand and took me to my class. A teacher was already in the class. As soon as I entered, he told me to introduce myself in front of the class. I told the class that my name is Mariah. I told them that I am 13 years. I told them about my family and what prompted me to St. Peters High School. After introducing myself, the teacher told me his name. He said his name is Mr. John. He told me that he is my class teacher. He said I should come to him if I need any help in my academics. After introducing himself to me, he told me to take my seat. There was no available seat at the front, so I had to make my way to the back seat. Mr. John is our mathematics teacher. He told us that his first lesson is just an introduction to the subject, so he won't stay long in our class. After talking to us for 20 minutes, he left our class and went to his office. I trailed him because I wanted to talk to him. I met him in front of his office talking to a female teacher. I got to know that the name of the teacher is Miss Eva because of her tag. I told Mr. John that I wanted to see him, but he said I should come back in 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I went back to Mr. John's office. When I got to his office door, I noticed that it was locked. I was about to return to my class when I started hearing a noise in Mr. John's office. I went back to the back of his office where the window is located. I looked through the window and I saw Mr. John and Miss Eva kissing passionately. They were so engulfed in the kissing that they didn't know that someone was looking at them. After kissing for some minutes, Mr. John and Miss Eva both undressed and started romancing passionately. At that point, the noise that was coming out of Mr. John's office became very loud. They kissed and romanced until noon. I noticed that they started undressing when they heard the bell for break time. At that point, they knew all the students will rush out of their classes. They knew they will be caught if they do not stop immediately. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this.
My name is Angel. I'm 18 years old. I was born in Michigan. I started my early life in Michigan. I lived with my parent in a decent apartment in Michigan. I attended Michigan High School where I completed my high school education. After I graduated from high school, I moved to Kentucky with my sister. My sister also lived with my parent until she graduated from high school. She moved to Kentucky when she got a job with the Kentucky Postal Services. When I graduated from high school, my sister thought it was wise to join her in Kentucky so that she could help me secure a job. 4 months into my stay with my sister, I got a job at the Kentucky Mall. The Kentucky Mall was one of the biggest malls in the United States of America. A huge number of people come into the mall every day. I was enjoying the job because it allowed me to meet a lot of people. I receive a lot of gifts from strangers who just admire how I do my job. One day while I was at work, a young man in his mid-20s approached me. He asked for my name. I told him my name is Angel. He wanted to continue the conversation, but I declined because I was on duty. Our superiors watch what we do at our duty post through the CCTV camera. We were given a rule book before we were employed. The rule book contains the do's and don'ts of the organization. It is stated in the rules that staff that violate any rule will be sacked immediately. One of the rules is that staff are not allowed to hold conversations with customers aside from business conversations. When I noticed that Terry's conversation was about violating the rules and regulations of the organizations, I quickly stopped him and told him to leave. Terry insisted on having my cell phone number before he leaves, so I gave him. I warned him not to call my cell phone during working hours because I will not be able to answer his call. I told him to call me around 6 p.m. if he wants to talk to me. Terry collected my number and left. When Terry left, Mr. Patrick came to me and asked me why I was talking to Terry during business hours. I explained to him that what happened was not my fault. I told him I told Terry to leave when I noticed he was talking about something outside the business. I told Mr. Patrick there was no way I would be able to know that he didn't mean to buy something the first time he approached. Mr. Patrick was satisfied with my explanation. He told me to be careful with male customers so that I do not fall in the wrong hands of the law of the organization. I thanked Mr. Patrick and he left. I continued attending to customers until 6 p.m. When I checked the time and it was 6 p.m., I called the attention of the manager. I told him my time was up. The manager told me to wait for the person that will replace me before I leave. He said he has contacted her and she told him she will be there in 10 minutes. He pleaded with me to wait for her. At exactly 6:10 p.m., Mariah arrived. She knew I wasn't happy because it was her lateness that kept me at the duty post longer than expected. I handed over the goods to her and I went into the accounting room to calculate my sale for the day. At about 6:45 p.m., I finished my calculation. As soon as I finished my calculation, I handed over the money to the manager and I went into the bathroom to change my clothes because I wasn't putting on our company's uniform. After changing into my homeware, I headed out to my house. I was about to board a bus when I heard my phone ringing. I didn't pick the call because I wanted to settle down in the taxi before picking any call. No sooner had I sat down in the taxi than my phone began to ring again. I brought out my phone from my bag to see who was calling me. When I looked at my phone, I noticed that the call was from Terry. I didn't want to pick the call in the first instance because I wouldn't be comfortable talking to him in a taxi. But when he did not stop calling, I eventually picked the call and I told him that I was in a taxi. He asked me why I left work late. I told him the person that was supposed to replace me if I leave did not come early enough, so I had to wait for her. I told him to call me in the next 30 minutes because I would be at home by then. He told me he would do that and I dropped the call. At about 6:30, I arrived home. I was very tired and hungry. I went to my room and take a shower. After taking the shower, I went to the dining to eat lunch. After my lunch, I went back into my room to rest. I wanted to sleep well so that I would be ready for the activities of the next day. My job is very demanding. Most times, I usually stand on my feet from when I resume in the morning until when I close in the evening. No sooner had I lied on my bed than my cell phone started ringing. Without checking the screen of my cell phone, I knew it was Terry. I answered the call and it was Terry. He asked me how my day went and I told him that my day was stressful. I told him that I was about to sleep before his call came through. I told him that I wouldn't have picked his call if I was not the one that told him to call me back in the next 30 minutes. I told him that whenever I get home from work, I take my shower, eat and go to bed because I am always tired. Terry said he knew how demanding my work was because he had a cousin that worked in a mall a few years ago. He said his cousin complained of tiredness whenever he comes from work too. Terry said he would allow me to sleep but I should tell him when I will be off duty so that we can go out and spend some time together. I told him I will be off duty on Sunday. He asked me where he should take me to. I told him that we can meet anywhere he feels is okay. Terry insisted that I choose a place, so I settled for the Kentucky Museum. I told him it has been my dream to visit the museum since I was young. I said I felt this is the opportunity I have to visit the museum for the first time. Terry and I bid each other good night and I dropped the call. As soon as I dropped the call, I covered myself in my duvet and slept off. I woke up in the morning feeling very happy because I would be visiting the museum for the first time. The museum is one place I looked forward to visiting since I was young. None of the high school excursions I went on excited me like this one I was about to go for. While I was at work, I was hoping for Sunday to come. I did everything I had to do at work perfectly to avoid coming to work on Sunday. One of the rules of our organization was that any staff that fails to balance his account on Friday or Saturday will have to come to work on Sunday to balance his or her account. The management does not condone the postponement of the account of the previous week into the new week. On Saturday after the close of work, I rushed down to the account room to do my account. I made sure all my accounts were perfect before I handed over my sale book to the manager. The manager cross-checked my sale book with the money I gave him. He saw that everything was perfect before he allowed me to leave. I got home very late because I stayed longer than expected at the office. I ate first because I was very hungry. After eating, I went into my room and took a shower. After taking shower, I lied down on my bed waiting for the next day. While I was surfing the internet on my phone, Terry's call came through. I answered the call. We talked about many things. He said he couldn't wait to meet me the next day. I said I also can't wait. He noticed that I was feeling sleepy, so he didn't take much of my time. He told me to go and sleep so that I will be healthy for the next day. I bided him goodbye and I dropped the call. Immediately I dropped the call, I covered myself in my duvet and I slept off. I woke up very early the next morning because I had some laundry to do. I packed all my laundry clothes into the bathroom and I began to watch them. I finished my laundry in about an hour. As soon as I finished my laundry, I took my bath immediately. After taking my bath, I slept on my bed waiting for my sister to call me for breakfast. 15 minutes later, I hear a knock on my door. I stood up to check who was at my door. When I opened my door, I met my sister standing in front of my door with tea and her bread in her hands. She said she decided to bring it to my room because she knew I was tired. I thanked my sister and collected the tea from her. I took my tea and returned to my bed. The only thing I was waiting for was Terry's call. I didn't want to call him myself in order not to sound desperate. While I waited for Terry's call, I took one of the novels I bought recently and started reading. 30 minutes later, Terry called. He asked me how my night was and I told him it was fine. He asked me if I have taken breakfast and I told him I took tea and bread. He asked me what time do I want us to meet. I told him I am free throughout the day, so I am fine with any time he chooses. He said he would come and pick me with his car by 11 a.m. He said he doesn't want me to go through any stress. I was speechless as Terry was talking. I could see how caring he was. I told him I will be waiting for him in front of my house before he arrives. My sister was in the sitting room when I was talking to Terry. When I dropped the call, she came to my door and knocked. I was wondering why my sister was at my door again while I stood up to open the door. When I opened the door, I saw her standing at my door. She asked me who I was talking to. I told her the person I was talking to is my friend that I met at my workplace. I told her that he wants to take me to the museum today. She asked me why I didn't tell her about Terry before. I said Terry is just a friend and there is nothing between us. She told me to take care of myself when we go out. I told her that Terry will come and pick me in front of our house, therefore, she will have the opportunity to see him. After talking to my sister, I sat on the couch in anticipation of Terry's arrival. At exactly 11 a.m., I saw Terry's call. When I answered the call, Terry told me that he was in front of our gate. I rushed outside to meet him. When I got outside, Terry was sitting in his car. I told him to come down and say hi to my sister before we leave. I brought Terry into our sitting room and I called my sister. I left Terry and my sister and rushed down into my room to dress. After dressing, I came out and told Terry that we can leave. Terry and I walked to his car and we drove off. 30 minutes later, we arrived at the Kentucky Museum. The museum was filled to the brim as different people from other states came to see how the museum looked like. Terry took me through all the galleries of the museum. At each gallery, a museum worker was stationed there to tell people about the story of the gallery. After going through the galleries in the museum, we went to the restaurant to get some food and drinks. While we were eating, I noticed that Terry could not take his eyes off me. The looks on his eyes suggested that he had something in his mind. I sat patiently waiting for Terry to tell me what was in his mind because I was ready to accept him if he proposes to me. A few minutes into the discussion, Terry began to ask me relationship questions. Terry asked me if I am in a relationship. I told him I am not in any relationship. He asked me why. I told him I wasn't in any relationship because I haven't someone I love. He asked me if I have been in any relationship before. I told him I dated a guy while I was in high school, but it didn't last long. I told him that the guy and I went our separate ways when we graduated from high school. I didn't allow him to finish his question before I asked mine too. I asked him if he is in any relationship. Terry said he is not into any relationship. I asked him why he is not in any relationship and he said his answer correlates with the answer I gave him when he asked me the same question. Terry said he has been searching for the right person but he hasn't gotten one. He said since the day he saw me at the mall, he hasn't stopped thinking about me. He said everything about me just wowed him. He said he wants us to be dating. He said he will be happy if I accept his proposal. I remained speechless for a few seconds. I didn't know what to say. I loved Terry but I didn't want to appear to him as a cheap girl. So I decided to stretch it a little bit. I told Terry that I am afraid of men. I said I don't want to fall in love with a man who will later stop caring for me. I told him how most men run after ladies because of sex. Once they get what they want, they abandon the lady. Terry interjected. He said he is not like that. He said he will take care of me. He said he will love me to the end of time. He said if he didn't love me, he wouldn't have come to me the day he saw me. He said I should try and understand him and give him a chance to be my boyfriend. I looked at Terry in the eyes and it appeared to me like he meant what he was saying. He looked like someone that loved me truly. I told Terry that I heard what he said but he has to give me time to think about it very well. He said he is not in a rush. He said I should take my time to make the best decision that is good for me. After the long discussion, we left the restaurant. There was a concert going on at the museum, so we went there to relax. The invited musicians sang melodious songs that make everybody stand on their feet. I didn't know when Terry and I began to dance. We danced like couples throughout the show. The concert ended at 4:30 p.m. and I told Terry that it was time to go home. I told him that my sister will start calling me if she does not see me by 6 p.m. We went to where Terry's car was parked and we entered the car. At exactly 5 p.m., we arrived at my house. Terry came down from the car while I also came down. I was wondering why he came down. He walked close to me and he hugged me tightly. He whispered in my ear that he loves me. He said I should think about what he told me very well and make a decision that will make him happy. While I was about to enter my gate, he asked me that what time should he be expecting a positive reply from me. I told him that I need about a week to think about it. I said after a week, I will make my decision and I will let him know. I waved him goodbye while he entered his car. I waited for him to drive off before I entered my house. When I entered our house, I met my sister sitting on the couch. She welcomed me and asked me how my day went. I told her how Terry took care of me. I told her about all the places Terry took me to in the museum. I told her how he stood by me in all the places we went to. My sister said she knew he would be a good man when she saw him. I sat close to my sister on the couch and I began to wonder if I should tell her about Terry's proposal. The way she accepted him when I was describing how he took care of me to her gave me the confidence that my sister will not have any problem with me dating Terry. I finally summoned the courage to tell her about Terry's proposal. I went very close to her and I held her arm. I told her all Terry said. I told her how he said he is interested in having an affair with me. She allowed me to finish my speech before she asked me what I told Terry in reply. I told her that I didn't give him an instant reply. I told her that I told Terry that I needed a week to think about it. My sister was very happy with the reply I gave Terry. She said Terry appeared to her like a nice and honest guy. She said he looks to her like someone that can take very good of a woman. She said the ball is in my court. I should do what I think is the best. She said I should date Terry if I think dating him is the best, or I should reject his proposal if I think rejecting his proposal is the best for me. She said she is good with any decision that I take. I hugged my sister and I appreciated her for always being there for me when I need her. I told her I couldn't have come this far without her. I told her I will continue to love her. I waved her goodbye and I entered my room. I was thinking of calling Terry to appreciate him for taking him out before his call came in. When I saw his call, I hurriedly answered the phone. As soon as I answered the call, I told him I was about to call him before his call came through. He said he just wanted to know if I am fine. I told him I am fine. He said he will allow me to rest so that I would be ready for work the next day. He told me to greet my sister and take care of myself. I told him to take care of himself too before I dropped the call. As soon as I dropped the call, I covered myself in my duvet and I slept off. The next morning, I didn't wake up as early as I should. It took the intervention of my sister to get me up from bed. She kept knocking until I woke up. When I opened my eyes, the time was 6:50 a.m. and I have to be at work by 8 a.m. I hurriedly took my bath and put on my uniform. I called a taxi while I was dressing, so the taxi arrived before I finished putting in my dress. I got to work at exactly 7:50 a.m. I went straight to the manager's office to fill the worker's attendance sheet before resuming at my duty post. While I sat down at my duty post, I couldn't take Terry's thoughts off my head. My mind was already attached to him, but I was still having a second thought whether dating Terry was the best for me. At exactly 12 noon, we went for a lunch break. After I ate at the restaurant, I checked on my phone to see if I have a call that I needed to return before I returned to my duty post. When I opened my phone lock, I saw 2 missed calls and 2 text messages on my phone. I checked my phone and I noticed that it was Terry that called and he was the one that sent the text message. I immediately returned his call. I told him I didn't pick his call because I was at my duty post. I told him that the rules and regulations of our organization do not allow us to pick calls when we are on duty. I told him I can only talk to him during lunch break or when I am at home. Terry apologized and promised not to call me during work hours. He said he will only call me when he is sure that I am on lunch break. I told him that my time was up and I have to return to my duty post before I ran afoul of the law. I told him to take of himself. I told him I will call him when I get home. I closed from work at around 7 a.m. like I always do. I was about to board a taxi when I saw Terry's call. I didn't want to answer the call at first, but I later answered it. When I answered the call, I intended to tell Terry to call me back when he gets home, but Terry shocked me. He said I should meet him in front of my workplace. I asked him what he was doing in front of my workplace. He said he left his workplace very early, so he decided to take me home. I rushed down to meet him. I was very happy because I wouldn't go through the stress of waiting for a taxi. When I got there, Terry was in his car waiting. I opened the door and I entered. I asked him why he had to drive a long distance to pick me from work. Terry said he could do anything for me. He said picking me up from work is the least thing he could do to show me that he loves me. While Terry was driving home, we talked about many things. When we were about 2 minutes to my home, Terry told me that he will like me to visit him at his home on Sunday. He said he will be happy if I show up. He convinced me to the extent that I could not decline his invitation. Terry doped me at my house and he drove off. My sister noticed that I arrived home earlier than I used to. She asked me what happened. I told her that I didn't wait for a taxi today. I told her Terry surprised me by showing up at my workplace. I told her how Terry insisted that he was going to drive me home. I told her he didn't allow me to decline because he was already at my office before he called me. My sister couldn't believe it. She kept reminding me what she told me about Terry. She said she was convinced that Terry is a nice guy the first day she saw it. She asked me if I have yielded to his proposal. I told her I haven't, but I will by the weekend because he has invited me to his house. You could see the joy on my sister's face. She was very happy for me. She was happy that I was getting into a serious relationship for the first time. The D-Day came and it was as if I have never seen a man before. I had already called Terry the previous that I would be coming to his house by 11 a.m. I was already up from my bed at around 7 a.m. I woke up that early because I had to do some laundry before I leave. I went to my sister's room to collect her laundry clothes because she was preparing breakfast. I wanted to take the stress off her. I finished the laundry at exactly 9 a.m. I was about to enter the bathroom to take my bath when my sister called me that breakfast is ready. I told her to eat hers while I take my bath. After taking my bath, I went to the kitchen to take my breakfast. My sister asked me what I wanted to do next. I told her I was going to my room to dress up for my outing. My sister said she will follow me to my room. She said she will choose the outfit that I will wear to Terry's house. I didn't have any option other than to allow her. She finally chose an outfit for me and I put it on. I had already called a taxi while I was eating. The taxi man arrived at the exact time I finished dressing. I waved my sister goodbye while I was about to enter the taxi. She waved back at me and she told me to take care of myself. I arrived at Terry's house at exactly 11:10 a.m. He was already waiting for me at his gate because I called him a few minutes before we got to his house. When I alighted from the taxi, Terry kept complimenting my beauty and my outfit. He said I look exactly like an angel that I was named. We both entered his sitting room and I sat on the couch. Terry asked what I wanted, but I told him I ate before I left home. Terry was not happy with my response. Because I didn't want him to be sad, I told him to bring me a bottle of wine. Terry brought the wine to where I was sitting and sat close to me. He asked me if I have accepted his proposal. I told him that I have accepted his proposal because I was convinced that he is a nice guy. Upon hearing what I said, Terry hugged me tightly. I felt comfortable in his arms. When Terry noticed how comfortable I was in his arm, he kissed me and I kissed him too. We started kissing passionately on the couch. After kissing for some minutes, Terry carried me into his bedroom. We continued our kissing and romancing on Terry's bed. We romanced each other to the extent that none of us could hold it anymore. Terry and I undressed and we had sex. I experienced what I have never experienced in my lifetime and it was very interesting. After the sex, I entered his bathroom and took a shower with Terry. While we were taking shower, we were still kissing. After taking the shower, I dressed up and Terry drove me home. Since that day, I have not been able to take Terry's thoughts off my head. Our love waxed stronger, which was what prompted me to have a tattoo of Terry on my chest. When I told him that I wanted to have his tattoo on my chest, he was very happy. I told my sister about it too. She said if that is what I want, there is nothing she can do. She said I should just do what is best for me. The next Sunday that I was off duty, Terry took me to the tattoo center himself. He said he wants to be the first person to see how the tattoo. 5 months after I tattooed Terry's name on my chest, Terry was involved in a ghastly car accident somewhere in Miami. Terry and his friends were traveling from Kentucky to Miami when they had that accident. Neither Terry nor his friends survived the car accident. 2 of his friends died on the spot, while Terry died after the 3rd day of the accident in a hospital. Since Terry died, I cannot stop thinking about him. Anytime I look at the tattoo on my chest, I just wish I could see or talk to Terry one more time. Death, they say, is inevitable, but it took away the person I loved most away from me. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thought on this. Love can be found anywhere. It can be found in weird places and weird circumstances. This is a story that talks about how true love was found in an unusual circumstance. An emergency phone call that was made to solve a very important issue led to a great love story. Daniel is a respected police officer. He does his work diligently. He has received several recognitions from a lot of government agencies for standing firm in trial periods. He has led many successful operations. Daniel joined the police force because of his father. His father was a police officer too, but he retired before Daniel joined the force. Daniel chose to join the police force because of the stories of different operations he heard from his father. During weekends when Daniel's father is at home, he usually tells him about dangerous operations they went. All these stories and the love Daniel had for the United States made him decide to join the United States Police Force. When Daniel graduated from high school, his father was still in service. He usually follows his father to the office once in a while because his father was a senior police officer. From there, he started knowing little things about the police force. He followed his father to the office one Sunday morning. Unfortunately, gunmen attacked their base. The policemen were able to overpower the gunmen, but they lost some officers. Daniel's father was very sad that day because he has just been promoted as the head of that base. When they got home, Daniel's father explained to him about the dangers involved in joining the police. He asked him if he saw the casualty they recorded when the gunmen invaded their base. Daniel replied in the affirmative. He said it happens almost every day. He said policemen die in the course of carrying out their duty every day. He said he was telling him that to know what he wants to get into. 1 year after Daniel graduated from high school, he got admission into Miami College. One day, some gunmen invaded their campus. Daniel joined the security men in overpowering the gunmen. From then on, people began to notice him in college. The head of security in the college personally invited Daniel to the school's security guard. Every Saturday and Sunday, Daniel usually joins the security guard in their training. After 4 years, Daniel graduated from college. As soon as Daniel graduated from college, he joined the police force. Fortunately, his first posting was to his father's base. But unfortunately, his father retired 2 months before he was posted. Daniel was happy that he was able to fulfill his dream of becoming a police officer. He carried out his duties diligently without fear or favor. He was always ready to tackle the enemies of the state. 5 months into Daniel's stay at his base, a beautiful female police officer was transferred to his base. On her arrival, she was brought to Daniel's office for briefing because he is her immediate boss. Because of Mary's hard work, she became Daniel's favorite officer. They did everything together. They went on deadly assignments together. As time passed by, they began to fall in love with each other, but none of them was ready to make the first move. Months went by without any tangible approach from any of them. One day, Daniel went to the gym with his friend Tony. After the gym, Daniel told Tony about Mary. He told him how he cannot stop thinking about Mary. He said he is afraid to share his feelings with Mary because of 2 things. He said the first is that if Mary accepts to date him, it might impact negatively on their work. He said his love for her can interfere negatively in their job to the extent of giving her preferential treatment over others. He said the second reason is that if Mary does not accept to date him, she might start disrespecting him. She might not give him the respect she used to give him before. Tony told Daniel that love supersedes everything he is thinking about. He said if he likes Mary, he should do the needful before another man snatches her away from him. After listening to Tony's advice, Daniel decided to take the bold step. He called Mary when he got home and asked her if she was free the next day. Mary told Daniel that she will be free the next day. He told her to meet him at the Miami resort the next day. "Do you want me to do anything for you, sir?" Mary asked. "No," Daniel replied. He said there is an important thing he wants to tell her. Mary agreed to meet Daniel at the Miami resort the next day. When she dropped the call, she started thinking about why Daniel wanted to see her. In her mind, she started thinking if Daniel was ready to tell her what she has been craving to hear from him since the day she was posted to his base. On Sunday morning, Mary did her normal cycling exercise. After the exercise, she took breakfast. While she was eating her breakfast, she called Daniel to ask him the time they are to meet. Daniel gave her the honor of choosing the time she felt will be most comfortable for her. Mary said she thinks 12 is better. Daniel said he has no problem with the time she chose. After eating breakfast, Mary went to the bathroom and took a shower. At that time, the time was 8:30 a.m. She felt she had a lot of time because her house is just 30 minutes drive to the Miami resort. Not knowing what to do, Mary put on her television set and started watching a movie she bought. She has been watching the movie for more than a month. She has not been able to complete watching the movie because of her busy schedule at the office. She thought that, since she still has like 2.5 hours before she leaves home, the best thing is for her to continue her movie from where she stopped. She loves the movie so much because the movie details the day-to-day job of a police officer. The movie was recommended to her by one of her colleagues. She watched the movie until 10:30 a.m. When she noticed that the time was 10:30 a.m., she switched off the television and went to the bathroom to take her bath. By 11:30 a.m., she has finished dressing and was ready to hit the road. By 12:05 a.m., she got to the Miami resort. At first, she didn't see Daniel, so she had to call him. When Daniel answered the call, she asked him if he has arrived at the Miami resort. Daniel told her that he has been there for more than 30 minutes because he wanted to be there before her. She told him that he should come and pick her at the front of the resort because she cannot see him. Daniel rushed to the gate to pick Mary. They walked to where Daniel was sitting. Daniel ordered for a bottle of wine while Mary ordered preferred juice. For more than 5 minutes, Daniel did not say anything. He kept thinking if what he was about to do was the best. At some point, he wanted to change his mind, but he kept remembering what Tony told him. He didn't know how he will feel if he sees Mary with another man. Mary sat for 5 minutes and she didn't hear anything from Daniel. She asked him why he said he wanted to see her. She said she was surprised when he told her on phone to meet him at the Miami resort because she knows him as someone who likes staying indoor when he is not at work. Daniel told Mary that he has his reasons for telling her to meet him at the resort. He felt the resort was the best place to say it. He said he has been thinking about what he wants to tell her for months, but he thinks this is the right time for him to say it. He said everybody knows him in office as a disciplined man. He said they know him as someone who does not associate with the female gender at work or home. He said it has been like that since he was young. He said the reason for such is not that he doesn't like women, but since he was a child, he has never met a woman that was diligent as Mary. He said the first day he saw her in his office, he thought she was like other female officers who don't take their job seriously. But his perception changed when they went for an operation in Michigan. He said he was happy with the courage she displayed in the operation. He said asides that, he has been watching her closely at work. He said how she faces her job squarely. He said female police officers like Mary are rare in the police force. He said all these and many more are why he has decided to make the decision he is about to tell her. He said he doesn't know how she will accept what he was about to tell her, but what he is about to tell her is nothing but the truth. What do you want to tell me? Mary asked. Daniel said he wants to tell her that he loves her, and he will want to spend the rest of his life with her. Mary could not utter a word, even though it was what she wanted to hear. She didn't know her immediate boss could be this romantic. The look on Daniel's face showed he meant what he said, so it was not difficult for Mary to make her decision. Moreover, it was something she has been waiting to hear from him. Mary looked at Daniel in his face. She told him that she has been craving to hear what he just told her for months. Mary said she fell in love with Daniel the first day she stepped foot in the base. She said she has been hearing positive reviews about him before she was posted there. She said she heard more of his positive reviews when she entered the base the first day. She said policemen who take their work diligently like Daniel are rare. She urged him to continue to do more for the police force. After they had their rink, Daniel invited Mary to his house. Daniel drove in his car while Mary drove in her car. After 20 minutes of leaving the Miami resort, they arrived at Daniel's house. Daniel showed Mary around his house. He showed her all the awards he has won in the course of his service. He took her to his gym center and his swimming pool. After going round the rows, they finally settled down on the couch. Daniel and Mary continued their conversation. This time, their conversation changed from their work duties to a more intimate one. They talked about sex. Daniel asked Mary if she was comfortable with having sex on the first date. Mary said she doesn't think it is bad. At that point, Daniel knew what Mary said was an invite. He went very close to Mary and kissed her. It was as if Mary was waiting for the kiss. She kissed him and they started kissing passionately. While they were kissing, Daniel's hand was in Mary's boobs. He was fondling it while Mary was using her hand to romance his nipple. The moaning was so loud that they had to put on the television so that neighbors won't hear their moan. After kissing and romancing for some minutes, Daniel carried Mary to his bed. They had sex until they laid in the evening. After the sex, Daniel and Mary freshened up. Mary entered her car and left. After that day, their love became stronger. They continued to visit themselves often. Every visit was an avenue to have sex. Mary decided that they should keep their relationship away from their colleagues. Nobody in their office knew about their relationship. After 6 months of dating, Daniel decided to take the bold step. He decided to officially wed Mary. He decided that the first thing to do was to take Mary to his parents. On Friday, he called his parents and told them that he has a surprise package for them. He said they should prepare for him on Sunday. That Sunday morning, he told Mary to meet him at his house. When Mary arrived, they had quick sex like they usually do before they headed to Daniel's parents' house. When they got there, Daniel's parents were surprised to see him with a lady. They didn't know anything about her relationship before that day. He hugged his parents. He told them that the surprise package he has for them is Mary. He told them he and Mary are colleagues at work. He told his parents how he was made her immediate boss on the first day she was posted to his base. He told them how he was always thinking about her but didn't dare to approach her. He told them how Tony acted as the game changer. He told them how he finally summoned the courage to approach Mary after Tony told him to do the needful. He said their relationship has lasted for 6 months and he thinks this is the right time to finally tie the knot with Mary. Daniel's parents were very happy to hear that. They told Daniel that it is their joy to see their grandchild. They urged them to do the planning as fast as possible. They also told Daniel and Mary to carry them along in the planning. Daniel's mom prepared lunch for everyone. They ate to their satisfaction before taking their leave. While they were about to take their leave, Daniel's father asked his son if he has seen Mary's parents. He said he hasn't, but they are planning to do that as soon as possible. Daniel's father said that was not good enough. He said he should see Mary's parents as soon as possible. Daniel joined Mary outside after he listened to his father. Mary was curious to know what kept Daniel back, so she asked him as soon as he joined her. Daniel said his father asked him if they have seen her parents. He said he told his father that they haven't, but they are planning to do so. Daniel said his father urged him to do so as soon as possible. While they were driving home, he told Mary to call her parents on phone. He said she should inform them of their visit. He said she should ask them when they want him to come and see them. Mary put a call through to her dad. She told him that she wants to bring someone to him. She asked him when she should come and see him. Mary's father said he and her mother will be free on Saturday. He said she can come anytime on Saturday. With that, Daniel and Mary decided that they will see Mary's parents on Saturday. Mary slept at Daniel's house that day because she was very tired. They went to work together the next day. Their colleagues were surprised to see Mary coming down from Daniel's car. They decided to make their relationship public. So, they started going to work together. When people began to see them together, they knew something was happening between the two of them. On Saturday morning, Mary and Daniel made their way to Mary's parents' house. 1 hour after they arrived there, they were welcomed by Mary's parents. They were surprised to see Daniel with Mary. They asked their daughter who Daniel is. She narrated to them how she met Daniel. She told them that Daniel is her immediate boss at work. She told her parents how Daniel has been a loving boss. She said he has moved from the level of a boss to the level of fiancé. She told them that Daniel is the person she is dating and they are planning to get married as soon as possible. Mary's father was very happy with what his daughter told him. He welcomed Daniel again. He asked him about work, his parents, and many other things. While Daniel was being queried by Mary's dad, Mary and her mom ran to the kitchen to prepare lunch. After 45 minutes, lunch was ready and they all ate together. After lunch, Mary and Daniel asked to take their leave. They were followed to the car park by Mary's parents. They kept advising them till they left. When they got home, Daniel called his father and informed him about his visit to Mary's parents' house. He told his father that he was accepted very well and they have given him the opportunity to marry their daughter. 1 week after, Daniel and Mary picked a date for their wedding. Their wedding was widely publicized by their friends and colleagues. Everybody was happy for them because of their diligence at work. The wedding day arrived and it was a scene to behold. Guests came from all spheres of life to witness the occasion. Almost every police officer in Miami was at their wedding. They got a lot of gifts from the police high command. The couples got a new car from their boss because they fulfilled certain conditions. The police force had a rule then that if police officers marry each other, they will get a brand new car as a gift. As soon as Daniel collected the car gift, he handed over his old car to one of his friends that does not have a car. After the wedding party, Daniel and Mary returned to their hotel room. The next day after the wedding, they traveled to Paris for their honeymoon. 2 weeks after, they returned to Miami because their holiday was over. The next day, they resumed back at work. Before their resumption, the Miami police have been fighting some deadly armed robbers. The armed robbers had sophisticated weapons. Therefore, the police found it difficult to overpower them. The armed robbers killed a lot of policemen during their cause of operation. As soon as Daniel and Mary resumed at the office, they were drafted to the unit that was saddled with the responsibility of arresting the deadly armed robbers. Daniel and Mary swung to work immediately. They went to the streets of Miami and interrogated people asking them what they know about the deadly armed robbers. After 3 days of interrogation, they finally got a lead. They met a tipster who gave them the hideout of the deadly armed robbers. The tipster told them that the best time to invade the hideout was in the night when they are asleep. With the information they got from the tipster, Daniel and Mary returned to base and assembled a team of armed policemen for the operation. They left the base at exactly 11 a.m. and they got to the hideout at midnight. As soon as they got to the hideout, they forcefully opened the gate and went into the apartment. In the process of opening the gate, the armed robbers were able to detect the police and they engaged them in a heavy shootout. The shootout lasted for more than an hour with casualties from each side. After the shootout, the policemen killed 5 of the robbers and arrested the rest. While the policemen were assembling in front of their car, they noticed that Mary was missing. They went back into the building to search for her. While they were searching for her, they heard a loud noise from one of the rooms in the apartment. The policemen rushed down to the room and found Mary in a pool of blood. She sustained an injury during the shootout. She was rushed to the bus and taken to the hospital. Daniel could not sleep that night. The next morning, he was the first person to arrive at the hospital. When he got there, he was allowed to see Mary. but she could not talk to him. As days went by, Mary's health deteriorated to the extent that she was using oxygen to breathe. Her condition deteriorated to the extent that friends and family were barred from seeing her. Days went by and Mary's condition did not improve. Daniel couldn't concentrate at work. His boss noticed his lack of concentration too. One day he called Daniel into his office and handed him a letter. At first, Daniel thought he has been sacked. When he got home and opened the letter, he realized that he was given 2 weeks' break to deal with the situation at hand. The break gave Daniel more opportunity to be with Mary. He goes to the hospital very early in the morning and leaves very late in the night. Most times, it is the doctors that usually tell him to leave because they don't allow people to sleep with patients at the hospital. On Sunday morning, while Daniel was getting ready to visit Mary at the hospital, he received a painful phone call. While he was putting on his dress, he heard his phone ringing. The number looked strange to him, so he didn't want to answer the phone at first. But when the call did not stop, he decided to answer to know why the person kept calling him. As soon as he answered the call, he heard the voice of Dr. Henry, who was the special doctor that was assigned to treat his wife. Dr. Henry told Daniel that he regrets what he wants to tell him, but there was nothing he could have done to save the situation. Dr. Henry said he is afraid to tell Daniel that Mary is dead. The cell phone fell from Daniel's hand and he began to cry profusely. He cried from morning till night. He locked himself up in his room and was crying. He refused to open the door for anybody that came to see him. 3 days after Mary's death, a police delegation led by the police boss came to visit Daniel. They found his door locked, but they noticed that he was inside. They could hear his cry from where they were standing. The boss called Daniel and told him to open the door, but Daniel refused. The police had no option but to force their way inside the house to prevent Daniel from doing something harmful. When they gained entrance into the house, they met Daniel in a sorrowful state. The house was scattered. The smell of alcohol took over the house. They noticed that Daniel has been drinking since the day he heard of his wife's death. They cleaned the house and arranged everything that Daniel scattered in the house. While they were leaving, they took Daniel with them. Daniel was lodged in a hotel close to the police base. He was given 3 months to recover from his wife's death. After 3 months, Daniel resumed at his duty post. His first day of resumption was emotional. When he entered the office, everyone could not hold back their tears. The tears on everyone's face brought back Mary's memory. Daniel tried to control himself, but he did not know when tears started rolling down his cheeks. After some time, he picked himself up and returned to his duty post. As soon as he resumed, an officer was allocated to him to replace Mary. But this time, a male officer. The officer briefed him on all the cases they had at the moment. Daniel started his day-to-day activities, but he found it very hard to take Mary's thoughts off him. 1 year after, Daniel was in the office when he received an emergency call from a toll-free line. The lady said she witnessed a robbery, and she called to inform the police. Daniel and his team immediately swung into action and apprehended the robbers. They brought the robbers to their base before charging them to court. When Daniel returned to the office the next day, he went through the phone records in search of the number of the lady that called. After some minutes, he was able to get the number. He called the lady and appreciated her for a job well done. He encouraged her to continue giving security agencies relevant information that would lead to the arrest of the people who have decided to terrorize the state. Daniel told the lady that he will like to meet her to show his appreciation because the operation gave him a promotion at work. The lady was so happy to hear about Daniel's promotion. She said she didn't want to accept his invite in the first place, but the good news he told her is what changed her mind. She asked Daniel if he was calling her with his cell phone number and Daniel replied in the affirmative. She said she will call him back and tell him where and when to meet her. Daniel appreciated the lady for accepting his wife before ending the call. His boss was already at the door to decorate him with his new rank while he was on the phone. When he noticed that Daniel has ended the call, he went into Daniel's office with some other officers to officially decorate Daniel with his new rank. While Daniel was driving home, his phone started ringing. He didn't answer the call because the number looked strange and he didn't want to break the law. The call kept coming in, but Daniel did not answer the call. When Daniel got home, he called the number to know who was calling him. When he called the number, Precious answered the call. Daniel said he doesn't know anybody called Precious. She had to explain herself before Daniel recognized. When Daniel eventually knew that it was the lady that made the emergency call, he pleaded with her. He told her that he did not pick the call because the number looked strange and he was driving home at that time. Precious said she called to inform him of where they will meet. She said Daniel should come to the Fun Garden on Sunday by 1 p.m. if he wants to see her. Daniel obliged. He told Precious that he will be there on Sunday by 1 p.m. Precious said goodbye to Daniel on the phone. She told him to take very good care of himself before ending the call. As soon as Precious ended the call, Daniel went to his bed and slept off. On Sunday morning, Daniel woke up early as he usually does. His first point of call was his gym center. After spending 1 hour in the gym, he returned to his room to rest. After resting for 30 minutes, he went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. After taking breakfast, he returned to the couch to take some rest because he still had time. He set his alarm to 11 a.m. so that he does not sleep off. At exactly 11 a.m., his alarm started ringing. The alarm was so loud that he had to wake up even though he was fast asleep. When he woke up, he went to the bathroom to take his bath. He took his bath, dressed up, and sat back on his couch waiting for 12:30 before he hits the road. At exactly 12:30, he made his way to the Fun Garden. He called Precious and told her he was already on his way. Precious told him that she has been there waiting for him. Upon hearing that, Daniel started speeding because he doesn't want Precious to get angry even though the time she gave him was not up. At exactly 12:50 a.m., Daniel arrived at the Fun Garden. He called Precious to come and pick him at the gate. Precious came to the gate to pick him. When they entered the Fun Garden, they looked for a nice place to sit. Precious started by congratulating Daniel on his promotion at work. After congratulating him, she said she was curious to know why he wanted to see her. Daniel started by telling Precious about Mary. He told her how he met Mary, how they got married, and she died a few days after sustaining gunshot wounds in an operation. He told Precious that he has not been himself since the incident. Precious felt sorry for Daniel. She said she feels what he has been going through, but she wants him to remain strong and resolute. Daniel told Precious that the reason he invited her was that he was looking for someone he can confide in. He said since Mary died, he doesn't have a female friend that he shares his problems with. He told Precious that he wants her to be his friend and if possible his lover. Precious looked at Daniel in the eyes. She didn't know what to say. She felt Daniel's pain. Precious took Daniel's car key and told Daniel to follow her to her house. 10 minutes after, they arrived at Precious's house. They went in and sat down on the couch. Precious knew Daniel was sex-starved, so she wanted to give him sex. As soon as they sat on the couch, her hand started going through Daniel's body. Before you know it, Daniel's clothes were already off. Precious took off her clothes too and walked Daniel to her bedroom. They continued to have sex until late in the evening before Daniel took his leave. After that day, Precious and Daniel became lovers. They did everything together. Daniel was able to find comfort after Mary's death. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or your thoughts on this.
Why Sophia must take a very difficult decision. My name is Sophia. I am 16 years of age. I was born in Miami and I lived there with my parents. I attended St. Margaret School. After graduating from St. Margaret, I moved to St. Paul High School. When I joined St. Paul High School, a lot of boys approached me. They wanted to date me, but I was not interested in any of them. I became the topic of discussion among the boys in the school. Everybody was giving me different names. Some said I am boastful, while others said I have pride. Others that I did not know said a lot of unpleasant things about me. I was different among all the girls in the school because most girls in the school had a boyfriend in the school. I saw it as something that wasn't acceptable, so I did not engage in it. Days went by and I continued to keep my stand. I knew the best thing was for me to stay outside any relationship in the school, even though I needed someone I could confide in then. A few days before the examination, I heard that everybody in my class planned not to sit close to me in the exam. They said they wanted to use that to send a message to me that if I do not their wish, I would suffer in school. I was laughing as Mary was telling me. She said she told me because she loved my personality and she thinks what I am doing is the best. What I heard from my junior Mary prompted me to read harder than I was doing before. I started reading at night because I wanted to be well prepared for the exam. I had another motivation to do well in my exam. My dad promised to take me to a cinema to watch a movie if I perform very well in my exam. I haven't watched a movie in a cinema before, so I thought this was the perfect opportunity to do so. When I got to school on Monday, the head teacher came to the assembly ground and told us that our exam will commence the next Monday. He urged all of us to read very well for the exam. He said at the end of the exam, The best student will be rewarded with the new iPhone 12. When I heard the announcement from the head teacher, I became more motivated than ever. I was using an Android phone then and it was not even a big phone. There were a lot of things that I was not able to do on my phone. My dad decided not to buy another one for me until I graduate from high school. After the announcement, the head teacher told us to go to our classes. As I was walking to my class, I could not take the thought of owning an iPhone 12 off my head. It sounded like the biggest motivation. 2 hours to the end of the school activities, Mr. John came to our class to inform us that he has prepared our timetable. He took his whiteboard marker and started writing. I took one of my notes and I wrote the exam timetable. I was happy with the timetable because 2 of my favorite subjects were slated for the first day. I loved mathematics and English language a lot. Therefore, when I saw that they were my first paper, I became happy and more willing for the exam to start. At exactly 2 p.m., the timekeeper rang the bell for the close of the day. I picked my bag and I rushed home because I was very hungry. When I got home, my mom had already prepared lunch. She told me to take off my school uniform and take a shower before eating. I wanted to eat first before doing any other thing, but I know my mom would not allow me to eat if I do not do what she says. I dropped my bag in my room and I took off my uniform. I entered my bathroom and I took a shower. I changed into another dress before coming out of my room. I rushed to the dining where my food was. I ate the food hurriedly because I was very hungry. When I finished eating, I sat on the couch to relax my brain because I was very tired. My mom sat close to me and she was asking me what happened in school. I told my mom what the head teacher said on the assembly. I asked her if she would allow me to use the iPhone if I win the award for being the overall best student in the school. My mom said I have come of age, so she cannot stop me from using an iPhone if I am awarded as the overall best student in my school. I was very happy, but I needed to confirm with my dad too. I sat patiently on the couch waiting for my dad to return from his office. When my dad returned from his office, I waited for him to take a shower and his lunch. I know it was his tradition to always watch CNN News before going to bed, so I waited on the couch. A few minutes later, my dad came to the sitting room and sat close to me. As soon as he sat, I told him what our head teacher said in school. My dad said it's a welcome development. He said he likes what the school is doing to motivate its students. I told him that the question I have for him is that I want to know if he would allow me to use the iPhone 12 if I am awarded as the best student. My dad said he has no other option than to allow me to use it because if I win, it will be a product of my hard work. I smiled, I appreciated him, and I went straight to my room. As soon as I entered my room, I opened my bag and I brought out my mathematics and English notebook. I read from the first topic to the last topic that night. I did not sleep until 3:30 a.m. As early as 6:30 a.m., I was awake getting prepared for school. Even though what I was getting myself into was difficult, the packages that will follow if I eventually become the best student were worth it. When I woke up, I did my daily routine, which was to pray, brush my teeth, take my bath, put on my school uniform, and eat my breakfast. After eating my breakfast, I went straight into my dad's car. I opened the door and I sat down while I wait for my dad to join me in the car. After about 5 minutes, my dad entered the car and we drove off. My dad dropped me off at the school gate and he drove off while I made my way into the school. When I entered, students were on the assembly, so I joined them. I was surprised to see the head teacher on the assembly ground. He said the reason he was on the assembly ground was to motivate us to do well in our upcoming exam. He said students that do well will receive valuable gifts from the school. He said students that fail will repeat their classes. After the announcement, the head teacher told us to go to our classes. For more than 2 hours, no teacher came to the class because it was revision week. Most of the teachers have completed their revision, therefore they do not need to come to class. 45 minutes before the break, Miss Williams came to our class. She was the only teacher that hasn't held a revision class with us. When she entered our class, she told all of us to bring out our notebooks. We started revising from the first topic and we ended our revision with the last topic. She urged us to read very well for her exam because it would not come easy. She said the questions she gave us are standard and technical questions that require a lot of reasoning. She left our class when the bell for the break was rung. As soon as I heard the bell, I went straight to the school canteen because I was very hungry. I ate to my satisfaction before returning to class. 2 hours after returning to class, the bell for closing time was rung. I picked my bag and I headed home. When I got home, I did my usual traditions, which were to bathe, eat, rest on the couch and wait for the next day. I did all these till Friday. When I got to home on Friday, I locked myself in my room. I read as if my life depended on the exam. I didn't come out of my room until Sunday when we were going to church. When we got to church, I was just praying for the church service to end so that I can return home. 5 hours later, the church service ended and we headed back home. When we got home, We were all hungry, so I joined Mom in the kitchen while my dad sat on the couch. After 45 minutes, the food was ready. We all went to the dining to eat. As soon as I finished eating, I went back into my room while my mom and dad sat on the couch. I read throughout the night. I read my notebooks from the first page to the last page. At exactly 4 a.m., I lied down on my bed to rest my brain. Deep into my sleep, I heard a knock on my door. I knew it was either my mom or my dad. I asked who was at the door. My mom replied. She told me to get up and start preparing for school. She said if I do not get up, I won't be able to follow my dad because he will soon be on his way to work. I jumped up from my bed and rushed into the bathroom because I didn't want to miss the trip with my dad. I usually find it difficult getting to school using a public bus. At exactly 7 a.m., my mom came back to my door and knocked. This time around, I opened the door immediately. I heard the knock because I was already set. When I opened the door, my mom told me that I should rush down to my dad's car because he was already in the car waiting for me. I didn't wait for her to complete her sentence before I started running to the car. As soon as I entered the car, my dad drove off. We arrived at St. Paul High School at exactly 7:30 a.m. My dad dropped me in front of the school gate like he always does and drove off. I didn't have the opportunity to drop my bag in my class because students were already coming out to the assembly ground after they heard the bell. I dropped my bag with the security men while I moved to the assembly ground. After the morning assembly routine, the head teacher came to address us. He told us the exam was starting that morning and he expects that we should have been prepared. He warned all students to stay away from exam malpractice. He said any student that is caught engaging in exam malpractice will face the school's disciplinary committee. He said facing the school disciplinary committee might lead to outright expulsion. He also warned all students to desist from taking anything to the exam hall that can implicate them. He said all students should check their pockets before going to the exam hall. He said the school management would not tolerate any excuse from any student if he or she is caught with incriminating materials in the exam hall. He also said another thing that is banned from the exam hall is a cell phone. He said any student that is caught with a cell phone in the exam hall will face prosecution. He said it is an act that the school frowns at, so every student should try their possible best to desist from any form of examination malpractice. He showed us a photograph he brought to the assembly ground. The photograph had the picture of students that were expelled from St. Paul School due to examination malpractice. After the head teacher finished his speech, he told us to walk our classes and wait for our teachers. When I got to my class, I opened my notebook and started revising what I read at home. After about 30 minutes, Mr. John came to our class with exam questions. He said all students should move to the exam hall. He told us to leave our books and bags in the class. He said we are only allowed to enter the exam hall with our pens. I opened my bag and I took my pen. I left my bag on my seat and I made my way to the examination hall. We are asked to form a queue in front of the exam hall. Mr. Patrick stood in front of the exam hall and was calling our names one after the other. When he calls the name of any student, he will check the student's identity card and the student's examination clearance before he allows the student to enter the hall. He did that for all students before we were all allowed to settle down for the exam. As soon as he noticed that we were all seated, he started distributing the exam questions. After distributing the exam questions, he took his whiteboard marker and wrote the starting and stopping times on the whiteboard. After writing the start and stop time, he told us to start. He went around the exam hall to check if there was any student that brought any incriminating material while the head teacher was monitoring the exam through the CCTV camera in his office. The exam started at exactly 9 a.m. Therefore, at exactly 11 a.m., we were asked to submit our papers. As soon as I submitted it, I rushed back to my class to revise before we will be called for the next examination. 30 minutes after, we were told to return to the examination hall for the next subject. The same procedure that was carried out for the first exam was carried out for the second exam. We queued and presented our identity card and examination clearance before we were allowed into the examination hall. The second examination began at exactly 11:30 a.m. The examiner gave us 2 hours. When I collected the question pair, I smiled because everything I have been reading throughout the previous week came out in the exam, just as Mr. Patrick did in the first paper. He took his whiteboard marker and wrote the start and stop time as soon as he gave us the examination paper. He told us that everyone will submit at exactly 1:30 a.m. irrespective of whether the person has finished solving the questions or not. He said those that are through before the slated time are allowed to submit. I started solving the questions from the first to the fifth. The exam had 7 questions, but the instruction of the examiner was that we should answer 5 questions. By 12:45 p.m., I was through with all my questions. I took my time to go through the answers one after the other to avoid any mistakes that might arise when the examiner is marking my script. The thought of iPhone 12 and a visit to the cinema would not want me to fail. I checked all questions and my answers and I saw that they were perfect. At exactly 1:15 p.m., I stood up from my seat and submitted my examination paper. As soon as I gave Mr. Patrick my answer booklet, he told me to go outside. I went back to my classroom waiting for other students to submit their papers so that we can be told to go home. At exactly 1:15 p.m., Mr. Patrick told all students to submit. He collected the entire answer booklet. When he came out, he told us to go home and prepare for the next exam on Tuesday. I was already holding my bag in my hand, so I didn't have to go back to the class. I immediately made my way to the school gate. Fortunately, I saw a taxi when I came out of the school gate. The taxi dropped me in front of our house. I gave him his money and I entered our house. Just as I usually do when I come back from school, I went into my room and took my shower. I changed into another outfit and I went to the kitchen to have my lunch. While I was eating, my mom asked me how the examination went. I told her my reading paid off because I saw everything I read in the exam. She was very happy. She told me not to relent. She told me to put more effort so that I can become the best student in my school. After my lunch, I sat on the couch to relax my head. My books were already on my table in my room. I put my alarm at 5 p.m. and I slept off on the couch. At exactly 5 p.m., the alarm started ringing. As soon as I heard the alarm, I woke up and I went into my room. I opened it and started reading for the next exam. I read until 1 a.m. before I retired to my bed. I woke up as early as exactly 6 a.m. and I went to the bathroom to take my bath. After taking my bath, I put on my uniform and I came to the sitting room to wait for my dad. When my dad came to the sitting room, he was surprised to me in the room already dressed. We all took breakfast and we went into his car. At exactly 7 a.m., we arrived at my school. My dad dropped me off and he went on his way while I made my way to my class. At exactly 7:30 a.m., we were called to the assembly ground. The head teacher reminded us of all the rules and regulations involving the examination. He told us to continue working harder to achieve a good result. He told us to go straight to the exam hall because the examination will start immediately after the assembly. When he left the assembly ground, we rushed to our classes to drop our bags because we will not be allowed to enter the exam hall with our bags. After dropping my bag, I rushed down to the exam hall. There was no time to revise, but I was confident that I had prepared enough. We queued in front of the exam hall as usual. We are only allowed into the exam hall after Mr. John checked for examination clearance. We started the examination by 8 a.m. and ended at 10 p.m. We were given an hour to prepare for our next examination. I went to my class, picked my bag, and went to a silent place to read because many students were making noise in my class. I was there when I heard that the bell has been rung for the exam. I went to my class to drop my bag and I joined my colleagues in the exam hall. We started the exam at exactly 11 a.m., and it ended at 1 a.m. After Mr. John collected our examination booklet, he told us to go home. I rushed back home to prepare for the next day's examination. That was my routine throughout the examination period. It lasted for 14 days. On the final day of the exam, the head teacher applauded all students. He said we have all done well, but only one student can be awarded the prize of the best student. He told us to go home. He gave us the date when the prize for the best student will be awarded. He said all students must come with their parents on the prize-giving day. On the prize-giving day, I woke up very early and took my bath. I went to my parents' room to wake them up. My parents were very surprised to see me at their door at that time. I told them to get prepared so that we can start going to my school. I was confident that I would be awarded the best student because I read very well during the exam, and I was able to answer all the questions that came my way in the exam. I left my parents' room and went back to my room to put on my clothes because I had already taken my bath. After putting on my cloth, I came to the sitting room to wait for my parents. At exactly 7:30 a.m., my parents came out of their room already dressed. My mom prepared a light breakfast for us. After eating breakfast, we all entered my dad's car and he drove off. We arrived at my school at exactly 8 a.m. The parking lot was filled to the brim with different cars. The hall was filled as students and parents were seated patiently to see which student will go home with the award of the best student. The head teacher made his way to the podium and declared the ceremony open. He appreciated everyone present at the occasion. He said the occasion is to celebrate the student that performed better. He said before the announcement, there are other activities like singing, dancing, and debate competition. After 2 hours, all activities ended and it was time to award the best student. The head teacher said he will call 3 students to the podium. He said the 3 students had the best result. He said only of those 3 will go home with the prize. He said the other 2 will be compensated too. The head teacher told the gathering to help him welcome Mason Williams. She was received with huge cheers as she made her way to the podium. Next was Chris Taylor. He was also welcomed with sounding applause. I became scared when the headmaster mentioned 2 names without mentioning my name. I began to wonder if I would be called. I never lost hope because I knew I did well in my exam. After that, The head teacher said, "Permit me to welcome Sophia White to the podium." I stood up with cheers on my face. My dad and my mom were smiling at me from where they were sitting. I walked to the podium and joined Chris Taylor and Mason Williams, who were already standing. The head teacher reminded the gathering that every student on the podium did well in the exam. He said it's just unfortunate that it is only one person that can wear the crown. He said everybody is a winner, including those that were not called to the podium. The head teacher announced the third position, which was Mason Williams. She collected her prize and she left the podium. It was time to announce the first position. I was shaking where I was standing. I kept remembering iPhone 12 and a trip to the cinema. The head teacher said the prize for the best student goes to Sophia. I screamed in excitement. My dad and my mom joined me on the podium to receive my prize. The head teacher brought out a new iPhone 12 and presented it to me. As soon as I collected the iPhone 12, I opened the box and started taking pictures with it. Other teachers presented gifts to me. Mr. John gave me a school bag while another teacher gave me an umbrella. I took photos with my mom and dad. I took photos with the head teacher and other teachers. After the photo session, food was served to all the guests. I ate to my satisfaction. After the meal, my dad told me it was time to go home. I went over to my teachers and gave each one of them a hug. I appreciated them for their investment in me. I told them I wouldn't be the best student if they did not take their time to teach me very well in class. I rushed down to where my dad parked his car. When I got there, my dad was getting ready to move. I entered the car and we drove off. While we were driving, my dad kept appreciating me. He said I have made him proud. He said the joy he felt when he was called to join me on the podium cannot be quantified. He said the last time he felt that happy was when my mother gave birth to me. He urged me not to relent in my studies. He urged me to continue making him proud. At exactly 4 p.m., we arrived home. We were all tired, so we all went into our rooms. I was the first person to wake up the next morning. I sat on the couch waiting for my dad to come out of his room. After about an hour, my dad came out of his room. I greeted him and he responded. He told me to join him in the dining so that we can have breakfast. While we were having breakfast, I reminded my dad of his promise. I said I want to go to the cinema as soon as possible. My dad agreed to take me to the cinema the next day. I woke up very early in the morning because I had some laundry to do. I packed my clothes into the bathroom and I washed them. After I finished my laundry, I took my bath. I checked the time and it was 7 a.m. I knew breakfast would be ready, so I went to the kitchen to eat breakfast. While I was eating, my dad came out of his room. He said we will be going to the cinema by 10 a.m. He said the movie we want to watch will be shown by 11 a.m. After I finished eating my breakfast, I went back to my room and picked up my novel. I read my novel until 8:30 a.m. before I slept off. I set my alarm at 9:30 a.m. before I slept. As soon as the alarm rang at 9:30 a.m., I got up from my bed and dressed up. I hurriedly dressed up and I came out to the sitting room. A few minutes later, my dad came out of his room already dressed and we moved to the car. We left the house at 10 a.m. and we arrived at the cinema at 11:30 a.m. When we got to the cinema, we went to get our tickets. While my father was buying the tickets, he saw his old friend. My dad and his friend hugged each other. When we entered the cinema, my dad sat at the front with his friend while I went to the back seat. A few minutes later, a young man in his mid-20s came to where I was sitting and sat close to me. He asked for my name and I told him my name is Sophia. He told me his name is Michael. He asked about my family background, educational background, and many other things. He looked cute, so I was happy to answer his questions. Some hours into the discussion, it became more intimate. He asked me if I have a boyfriend and I told him I do not. He looked amazed when I said so. He said he does not have a girlfriend too. He said he has been looking at me from where he was sitting. He said he was happy that I did not sit close to my dad because there was no way he would have approached me. He ended his conversation by saying he loves me. He said he wants me to become his girlfriend. I loved him too, but I did not want to say it immediately so that he wouldn't think I am cheap. I gave him my cell phone number. I told him to call me so that we can talk better. After I gave him my phone number, I told him to leave because I noticed that my dad was already looking for me. After the movie, we entered the car and drove off. I couldn't take his thought off me. It was as if I haven't seen a man before. When we got home, I went straight to my room because I was expecting his call. 30 minutes later, Fred called me. We talked about the movies and many other things. He told me he is still waiting for my reply about his proposal. I told him that I needed to ask him a question that I forgot to ask at the cinema. He told me to ask. I asked him about his age. He said he was 26. Fred told me to give him an instant answer to his proposal. I told Fred that I loved him too. He was very happy as I could hear how loud he was screaming on the phone. We talked about many things before I dropped the call. Since I dropped the call, I have been thinking, I love Fred so much, but I am afraid to continue the relationship because of his age. Fred is 10 years older than me. I think the age difference is much Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or your thoughts on this.